Hey, it's Romania Black. Is it safe to come out? Is it okay to come out? Because I took a week off after chapter 78 and 79 of Scum Villain. As I spit all over the microphone. Oh my god. Yeah, so remember last week? If you're still here, hi. It's good to see you still sticking with me, but oh man. Yeah, so last week was chapter 78 and 79. I was not very impressed with Lo Binghe. I was not impressed at all. I have some comments that I want to add to that after I calmed down, got to a better place. The thing was, I was so frustrated. I read that chapter set at night, and my moderators, Happy and Be Happy and Floor, who are literal saints, they were asleep because they're over in Europe. They're on European time zones. I'm in the United States, so our time zones are way off. So I knew it was late at night, and I was like, I can't talk to anybody. I'm frustrated and pissed off, and I can't just vent to anyone, and I can't go in the Discord because I'm watching ahead. So, so I waited till the morning, and then I just vented all of my frustrations, and Be Happy and Floor were like, hold on there. It's like, I'm fine. And they were like, are you? So, yeah, so sorry about that. Last week, when I get worked up sometimes in a reaction because it's in the moment and I'm just so frustrated that it was hard for me to vent. And then I'll be honest, I went back through last week and I was like, do I post this? Do I edit it? Do I delete parts? And I decided not to because I'm like, no, you said this and you got to own up to it, girl. You got to claim responsibility for it. So, and I was really harsh. I was super harsh on Lo Binghe. I said a few things that when I was editing, I was like, oh, girl, you should not have said it like that. That came off really harsh. And I'm sure every Lo Binghe stan has by now let me know exactly what their thoughts are. So I'm like, oh. But with that being said, we are on the last two chapters of Volume 3. Chapters 80 and 81, which is a pretty big chunk. So I'm like, okay, all right. And I'll be honest, I was really, I told my moderators, I'm like, do I read Volume 4? Is it gonna be worth it? And Be Happy's verbatim words were, it's so damn worth it. And I was like, okay. It was like a mic drop. I'm like, okay, you got me. I'll read it. So that's all they said. They didn't give me any spoilers or anything, but I was like, I was kind of walking the line because I have come to realize over the years that if it's a one shot, one chapter, one volume of manga like BL where there's some maybe toxic relationship themes, then I'm like, well, it's a one shot. It's going to take me 10 minutes to read this. Then I'm going to move on and it's fine. And there has been a series that I've watched, Given, on my channel, which I love Given a lot, but there is a moment where they talk about a toxic relationship in that series, but those characters break up. so it gets solved. The problem gets solved. But here with Lo Binghe and Shinchingcho, it's a little more complicated. So I wanted to go back over some notes from last week. I didn't have any comments I really wanted to talk about. Most of the comments, which were really awesome from the chapters that I've just looked at this week, were all really good comments, but there wasn't anything in them that I was like, oh, I'm going to need to note that, or that was something new or interesting that I didn't cover in these last few chapters. But I did make some notes. I do want to point out things I didn't say in the discussion, that Shang Qinghua, what I kind of think is interesting, and I didn't note it last week, is that Shang Qinghua is kind of accepting how he is. And if he does love Mobe June, he's kind of very open about it, despite how the situation looks. Like he was like, he can't fly, I gotta go save him. And then he jumped in the fray. He did not question or deny or challenge Shinchingcho when he was like, Mobe June. He's like, yeah, I gotta go save him. He was very accepting and open. And it shows him immediately going to save Mobe June versus Shinchingcho, who has been hesitant with Lo Binghe this entire time, and kind of denying his attraction and all of this, which at this point we haven't had Shang Qinghua out in the open enough to be like, were you gay the whole time, Shang Xinghua, and you were just trying to mask it with this novel, and now the jig is up and you're openly admitting that you are and you're okay with it? And Shen Yan is like, I didn't know about this about myself, but here we are. It's going to be interesting, I'm assuming in volume 4, when we get to it, to see if we get any more with that. And then Yu Qingyan, I thought it was also important to note that he was suffering throughout the whole story because he knew who he was and he knew his relation with Shin Qingqiu, but he just couldn't come out and say it for whatever reason. And he was suffering, but yet he was a good person and trusted Shin Qingqiu despite how weird and like unusual Shin Qingqiu was being once Shen Yan took over. And so I feel like he serves as kind of a lesson in character for both Shin Qingqiu and Lo Binghe to be like, hey, look at what he did. You know, you two bakas, you need to do some work, you know? It definitely makes sense to me at this point why MXTX possibly had Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessings follow Scum Villain Self-Saving System. And this is going to be like the next 30 seconds. A few spoilers for, like, it's very basic, so it's not too big a spoiler, but just next 30 seconds. I wrote down that it definitely makes sense why MXTX possibly had Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing follow Scum Villain Self-Saving System, with the protagonists working more together and there being miscommunication, but them working it out, especially in Modao Zushi. I feel like in Heaven Official's Blessing, there is miscommunication, but it's more like the mystery of what's going on, and neither party really ever gets mad at each other. They're just kind of like, oh, hey, I wish you were here. Like one of those situations. But they work together so much, and there's all these external forces that are the problem. It's not an internal conflict. Whereas with Lo Binghe and Shin Qingqiu, it's very much an internal conflict. Heaven Official's Blessings protagonist couple have like the opposite problems that Lo Binghe and Shin Qingqiu do. Shin Qingqiu and Lo Binghe, everything outside is working well for them. It's just inside they're having problems. And Heaven Official's Blessing is the polar opposite of that. And then Modao Zushi actually has some conflict and miscommunication, but the two characters work together literally the entire series to work it out as they go and to kind of reconnect and recontextualize their pasts to figure out what to do with that. And I feel like since those stories were written after this one, MXTX was able to sit down and go, yeah, you know, I could do those things, and then rework it. So there is that. So end of those spoilers there. I guess after talking with the moderators, my biggest thing from last week that was so frustrating for me, it wasn't necessarily Lo Binghe himself. He was being bratty in the moment, and I was mad because I'm like, did you not learn anything from the last 2 times that your Shizun died? Did you not learn anything? And I was getting really frustrated by it. But I understand Lo Binghe as being one with all this trauma and issues and things like that. What really got me upset was that MXTX makes Shin Qingqiu feel so guilty over all that happened. And I'm like, our peerless cucumber should not feel responsible for being Lo Binghe's life coach and doing all the work while Lo Binghe gets the excuse of the tragic backstory. It has to be mutual on both parts. And this is what Floor and Be Happy and I were like, Shin Qingqiu is a partner, not a psychiatrist. And I've seen relationships, friendships, romantic relationships where the partner treats the other like they need to be their live-in therapist. And I'm like, there are professionals, and I know this is a fantasy story and there's not professionals Lo Binghe can go to, but it is not your partner's job to be your therapist, especially where they're at right now, right? So even if Lo Binghe loves him no matter what and wants him to himself, he needs to really evaluate himself and fix this problem if he wants Shin Qingqiu to be able to love him. And basically, I've come to realize through this series That's my biggest qualm. I wasn't so much mad at Lo Binghe, but I was mad that MXTX was okay with making this plot decision. And I was like, and then I'm like, oh, was she in high school when she wrote this? Okay, well, that makes some sense. So, when you're in high school, I'm like, I was like, the emotional maturity as someone who's like in their 30s, I'm like, you don't know this when you're in your teens or 20s. You have to experience it over time, but you come to this conclusion, right? And so I've also realized in reading this story that I don't like my partner to be emotionally fragile. Some people like that. Some people are like, oh, I'll be your caretaker. Oh, look at them being all emotionally fragile and traumatized. Oh, we'll just help you make it better. No, I'm the one that's emotionally fragile at times. And so I would need a partner that can step up and be the emotionally intelligent one, right? Because I feel like I would be the one that needs that stability around me. I can't do someone with a heart of glass. That's just, I don't think that's my type. And so Lo Binghe is not my type. Shinshingcho is very similar to me. I don't know if they're my type or not, but they're very similar to me. Lo Binghe, I can't deal with brats. Cannot. I'm like, you need to grow up and then come back. So as Flora said in the discussion we were having, I love Shinshingcho just as much as Lo Binghe, but I want to treat him better and not rely on him for validation and love. That should come naturally. You shouldn't demand it. And that's what was making me so mad. And what has made me mad about Lo Binghe is that he is relying on Shinshingcho to validate and love him, but you can't demand and force someone to do that. And I don't want to say that I feel like Shinshingcho is being Stockholm syndromed into it, but he's kind of being forced to be like, oh, well, I guess it was my fault. I'm like, no, it's not your fault. It's not your fault at all. Lo Binghe needs to get a grip. Yeah, no. So that's kind of where I was last week and where I'm at now. Now, of course, in the wings, as I tell you all this, you're all probably sitting on your hands with your fists in your mouth going, Romania, just wait until volume 4. And I'm fully aware of that, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's a perfect little story. I'm just having a great time, when inside I'm screaming. I'm going to be real with you all how I feel. And I'm not just going to be like, it's just the most perfect story. And I have no complaints when that's not the case. And again, I understand where Lo Binghe is coming from. I love MXTX as a writer. And that was my thing. I was telling the moderators, I'm like, I want to have faith because I love MXTX as a writer. She's one of my favorites, that she's going to solve this issue. I just, at this point in the story, at the end of volume 3, didn't think this was going to be the issue since, we've had all these other moments leading up to it, but whatever. Whatever. Anyway, I do want to make note that the Feral fandom did show up this week. There was a lot of fan art in the Discord. A lot of them are relating to the chapters that were airing at the time that I'm filming this, so they're not relevant anymore. But there were 2 pieces of artwork that I had to sit back and go, well, this makes me feel a little bit better about Lo Binghe. I'll show you the newer one first. It's Lo Binghe as, he's like, Shazoon, would you still love me if I was a blobfish? If I tell you all no, will you judge me? Herm. Herm. So yeah, I don't know. I will be honest, at the end of the last chapter set, I was like, we'll talk about it here in a hot second. But the other Feral fan art is the one that got me, where I was like, I thought we were past this. And they were like, no, you fool, sweet summer child. I don't know what the fudge this is. It looks like a turkey that is made from Lo Binghe's. It is a Lo Binghe turkey. It is a turkey whose head, wings, it's not just the head and the tail feathers that are Lo Binghe's. It's not just that. It's also the arms, the wings are Lo Binghe's, and then on its feet, the talons are also Lo Binghe heads. What is this monstrosity? What? I'm going to be honest. That made me feel a lot better and gave me a good laugh. So to Shy Galadriel and Pancake, thank you. I appreciate that. But here's my thing. During Modao Zushi and Heaven of Vigil's Blessing, those two pairings are OTPs. They are untouchable. You cannot ship anybody, in my mind, and this is just my opinion, in my mind, in Heaven of Vigil's Blessing, Hua Chong and Shilian, OTP, can't ship anybody else with them. I know some people kind of do, and I get it, but not for me. OTP. Modao Zushi, Wangxin is the ultimate MXTX OTP. You cannot ship anybody else with Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji. Does not work. Nope, no, not to me. My opinion. This, if you want to ship Liu Qingge with Shen Qingqiu, all right. He's not trying to destroy the world because you have friends. Yu Qingyan, Shen Qingqiu, okay, all right. Those people have not been rude or evil to Shen Qingqiu or forced them to drink blood and do all these other things. They've not done that. So you know what? I did not expect to be a multi-shipper in an MXTX story. And I think that's what's gotten me so riled up. I'm like, I'm supposed to be rooting for these two as an OTP, and I'm just not there at the moment because Lo Binghei's being a brat. And I'm like, I can't really fully ship them at the moment. But hopefully these chapters will solve that problem. Because as we're reading, we're on chapter 80, and Shen Qingqiu has decided, which I am glad that he's like, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to abandon him, because that's been his whole shtick. He's like, you keep abandoning me. And it's like, well, you're not paying attention to why that might be. So I understand that Shen Qingqiu is doing the right thing, and I hope that it pays off. But we also have an entire novel back there waiting for next week. So we'll just see where it goes. But anyway, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm sure that many of you felt the same frustrations, maybe not to the extent that I have, because I'm like the biggest Shen Qingqiu stan. So I was just so frustrated on his behalf last week. But I am excited to see where we go to from here, and hopefully it works out. So with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right into chapters 80 and 81 of Scum Villain Self-Saving System. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 80. But Wu Qin shook his head. If it were curable, it wouldn't be an obsession. I thought so too, Shen Qingqiu returned the bow and then spun around. Who made him the object of Lo Binghei's obsession? The interior of Maigu Ridge had collapsed into a complete mess. Before, there had been hundreds upon thousands of caves, sprawling and interconnected, but now half of them had crumbled with the tremors, the fallen rocks forming barricades everywhere. Shen Qingqiu wove through the remains, struggling to navigate the ruins. Suddenly, from within a giant pile of rubble, there came a feeble wisp of demonic energy. Shen Qingqiu called without thinking, Lo Binghei? It couldn't be that Lo Binghei was trapped here, having been sealed by Yu Qingyang's binding technique, could it? He leapt over the pile and lifted the topmost stone slab. Underneath was a stretch of battered green scales. Small and loose pebbles tumbled off them as they rose and fell weakly. Zhu Xilong's snake form was coiled into a small fortress, and Tianlong Jun lay in the middle, sheltered within the watertight hold. The latter's body had deteriorated even further, to the point that it seemed... what was this part about Jin Mo? Interesting. I don't know where that little thing is. It seemed that his head would fall off at any moment. He opened his eyes and looked at Shen Qingqiu, then even had the cheer to greet him. Oh, Peak Lord Shen. How is this a situation with you two? Said Shen Qingqiu. I'm long since used to this, but Zhu Xilong isn't doing too well. Not doing too well, indeed. Those two huge yellow eyes, once always as bright as lanterns, had begun glazing over, though there was still life in them. Quite a few of his snake scales had been scraped off, leaving stretches of red and black wounds that patterned his entire body. Shen Qingqiu helped remove the stones, crushing the snake's tail, and then realized that Zhang Yang was still stabbed into Zhu Xilong's body. Oh! He reached to grab the hilt and then yanked the sword out. Blood loss meant very little to demons. Rather, having Zhang Yang and its powerful spiritual energy stabbed into him would have done far more harm. Hasn't Peak Lord Shen always preferred to ignore him? Asked Tianlong Jun. Who says I've always ignored him? said Shinshingcho. It's just that sometimes communicating with him is difficult. How is he? Tianlongjun stroked the snake's triangular head with the stump of his arm and didn't answer. Instead, he asked, what will Peak Lord Shin do about the situation after this? Destroy the sword, of course. Jinmo's invasion has already reached Lo Binghei's soul, binding their lives together. If you destroy the sword now, won't that be the same as killing him? Oh, we didn't talk about binding their souls together. We didn't talk about that. What? Well, then I'll think up another method, Shinshingcho said resolutely. Even if you're unable to stop the merge in time. Shinshingcho drew in a breath. If I can't make it, then that's that, he said irritably. We should do everything we can first and then worry about the rest later. At that, another smile appeared on Tianlongjun's face. He sighed and lamented, as expected. I can't bring myself to hate humans. Shinshingcho didn't know how to respond to this line of his. It was joyful, yet seemed far too heavy. What about Lo Binghei? He asked to change the topic. Have you seen him? I thought Peak Lord Shin knew, Tianlongjun said, bemused. Hasn't he been behind you this whole time? Shinshingcho's hair stood on end, and he slowly turned his head. Sure enough. Oh! Lo Binghei stood behind him, his eyes fixed unswervingly on his back. Exactly when had he become standing there? Or perhaps the question was, exactly when had he become following Shinshingcho? Lo Binghei smiled. Shizun, give me the sword. Shinshingcho maintained his composure and raised Jinmo. Well, you can come and take it yourself. If you want it, come and claim it! Lo Binghei took a step towards him and then suddenly stopped. The corner of his mouth twitched, and his shoulders began to shake. Shinshingcho held the sword horizontally in front of him. What's wrong? Lo Binghei gritted his teeth. Get lost. Shinshingcho hadn't managed to respond when Lo Binghei pressed a hand to his temple and then lashed out with a spiritual blast. Get lost, all of you. Don't touch him. Get lost. Those words weren't meant for Shinshingcho, and the spiritual blast didn't strike him either. Instead, it grazed his shoulders, blasting apart the already pitted cave wall behind him. Tianlongjun offered a friendly reminder. Jinmo conjures illusions. Even without saying so, Shinshingcho had guessed about as much. At present, Lo Binghei clearly saw things that no one else could. From his hand came haphazard blasts of spiritual energy and demonic chi, and he specifically attacked the space around Shinshingcho, engaged in brutal combat with a non-existent enemy. The mountain began to shake again, clusters of rocks rolling down. Shinshingcho looked at the two people by them, who could fairly be described as the sick and the elderly. Binghei, he called, come here! Though Lo Binghei looked somewhat dazed, he was still very obedient. Sure enough, he began to follow Shinshingcho. The one in front dashed with the wind beneath his heels, while the one in back seemed to drift like a wraith, though he somehow didn't fall behind in the slightest. In the middle of the chase, the system set out a notification. Lo Binghei's base anger points, 300. Multiplied by Jinmo's coefficient of 10, the current value is 3,000. Where's the key item? Shinshingcho roared. Oh, hurry the fuck up! The jade guanyin! The jade pendant! Give it here quickly! Greetings. The key item is currently loading in. We recommend deploying another tool in the interim. Loading the fuck? What tools are there? Show me. Gentle reminder. The small scenario pusher luxury edition that you recently upgraded has yet to be used. Shinshingcho abruptly braked. In all honesty, to this day, he still hadn't figured out exactly what kind of doodad this small scenario pusher was, let alone how it worked. But based on his single experience with it before, it really seemed to be quite effective. I thought he already used it. What? Shinshingcho gritted his teeth. Well, give it here. Let this great one see how epic and thrilling this luxury edition is. Bring it on. He just forcefully slammed the confirm button when the ground beneath his feet collapsed again. As he fell, Shinshingcho had only one thought. Oh, fuck me, you call that a small scenario pusher? It's a large scenario bulldozer! However, even after a long downward tumble, while rocky shadows rolled towards him from overhead. None of the rocks from the landslide smashed into him. Someone was shielding him from above. Lobinghay was completely out of his mind, his senses muddled, but even at a time like this, he used his own body to block the rocks for Shinchingcho. With a backhanded shove, he flung the boulders that had struck his back aside like they weighed nothing. And then he stared blankly down into Shinchingcho's eyes, and for a brief second, clarity seemed to flash through those pupils. But after a dazed blink, the murk returned. The dark red mark of sin crept over his forehead, expanding outward until marks covered the entirety of his snow-pale face. And then continued to spread down his neck. Jinmo had fallen beside them, and it seemed to respond to the marks on Lobinghay's body. It glowed and dimmed, its purple light and black miasma circulating endlessly. "Shizun," Lobinghay mumbled. "Mm-hmm," said Shinchingcho. Blood trickled down Lobinghay's forehead, and his voice seemed to quaver slightly. "Shizun, is that really you?" "Mm-hmm." "It's real this time?" asked Lobinghay. "Didn't you leave with the others just now? I saw you go." "I won't leave," said Shinchingcho. Lobinghay slowly lowered his head and pressed his face into the gap of Shinchingcho's collar. "Shizun, it hurts," he said in a tiny voice. "My head hurts." The tone sounded both like he was acting cute and like it did hurt. Very much so. Shinchingcho slowly reached out with both arms, wrapping them around Lobinghay's shoulders. Then he gently patted Lobinghay while soothing him like one would a child. "Good boy. It'll stop hurting soon. If I'm good, I'll stop hurting and Shizun won't ever leave me alone ever again," said Lobinghay. "It'll stop hurting in a moment." "I don't believe you," Lobinghay said quietly. Suddenly he exploded in yells. "I don't believe you! I don't!" Seeing that he was having another episode, Shinchingcho grabbed his shoulders and abruptly lifted him up, his head raised. The angle wasn't right. Teeth clacked against teeth, making pain radiate through him. Lobinghay's lips were sealed, but his eyes continued to stare blankly forward. He blinked once and then twice. Shinchingcho's eyes were also open, as their wide-eyed gaze remained fixed on each other. Shinchingcho internally thought this was extremely unsettling. Oh! After a while of just staring at each other, their eyes completely unclosed, he finally gave in and shut his eyes first. With a flutter of his lashes, he pressed forward and deepened the kiss. His teeth and mouth were still ringing and numb from the collision. In truth, this act couldn't be called kissing at all, but gnawing. Oh my gosh. Lobinghay needs to learn how to kiss people. Biting is not attractive to me at all. However, Lobinghay was clearly very pleased with said gnawing. He bit all over Shinchingcho's lips like they were pieces of candy, his breaths growing shorter and shorter. Suddenly, he pressed Shinchingcho down against the ground. Is he going to have sex with Shinchingcho to cure himself like he did with the woman at the very beginning? With a ripping noise, Shinchingcho's outer robe was torn to pieces. Shinchingcho moved to strip his remaining clothing himself. He pulled and tugged, sliding his pants down below his knees, stripping his torso until only a loose inner robe remained, which slipped down to reveal one pale shoulder. Oh. Lobinghay's hand, well, this is the luxury edition. Lobinghay's hand ran all along the collar and dipped inside. His entire body was searing hot, even more so than the time at the Holy Mausoleum, and his hand kneaded hard over Shinchingcho's skin. Hot, in pain, panicking. Shinchingcho knew what would follow. He had long since made up his mind. Now, he consciously flipped himself over so that his back was to Lobinghay. Though he had no experience with this kind of thing, he'd heard before that for the first time it was easier from the back. Even though deep down he thought this position was a little humiliating, he couldn't care about that much now. He'd done this out of consideration for Lo Binghei's convenience. But unexpectedly, he was flipped back around. Lo Binghei jammed himself between Shin Qingqiu's legs. Oh God! I'm choking. Oh! Lo Binghei jammed himself between Shin Qingqiu's legs. His entire attention wrapped on Shin Qingqiu's face. Only a few inches remained between them, their steaming breaths intermingling. Something blazing hot pressed against the dry... Oh my God! Where was the lube? Y'all! Something blazing hot pressed against the dry entrance of Shin Qingqiu's lower half, its circumference a little terrifying, not unlike that of a full-sized ball. Due to the slight moisture at its tip, the tight entrance managed to take it in just a little. Lo Binghei didn't slam himself in right away. He was still in a daze, but he still insisted on staring at Shin Qingqiu's face while he pressed tiny scattered kisses to his cheek little by little. Originally, Shin Qingqiu's nerves had been stretched taut, but with these subconscious actions on Lo Binghei's part, he relaxed a little bit. He'd relaxed a little too early. Shin Qingqiu finally experienced what it felt like to be split in half down the middle while still alive. Out of his mind with pain, he kicked his legs out and he jerked away. Lo Binghei clamped down on his waist and dragged him back. Shin Qingqiu's back scraped over the rough rocks, his flesh burning and stinging. The sudden eruption of agony wiped Shin Qingqiu's mind clean. Like a fish suspended out of water, he began to struggle violently. But the more he struggled, the less stable Lo Binghei's mental state became. His eyes were crimson, his breaths disordered his mind in chaos. All he could think about was holding on to Shin Qingqiu and thrusting himself into the hilt. The thickest part had already entered. Together with the long shaft, it pressed down in towards his insides. Shin Qingqiu braced his hands against Lo Binghei's chest, but the iron grasp on his waist left him unable to move. His legs were pressed back against his chest, his backside raised, so he was powerless to stop his insides from being forced open. He swallowed down his screams, doing his best to relax and open himself more, to let Lo Binghei slide himself into his depths. Once everything was inside, Shin Qingqiu felt like he'd been impaled by a rod of hot iron, nailed alive to a sacrificial stone. Lo Binghei seemed to finally have found some small sense of security. He grasped Shin Qingqiu's hair, lifting and kissing it. Though he could ignore the sting of his scalp, the shift in position gave Shin Qingqiu the terrifying, if mistaken, impression that his insides were being jostled. His entrance spasmed uncontrollably from the pain. In his stupor, Lo Binghei knew no restraint. He only understood his own exhilaration and began to ruthlessly thrust in and out. His movements were both quick and rough. After over 100 uneven thrusts that alternated between fast and slow, he managed to smoothly and continuously bury himself inside. Shin Qingqiu's eyes were flooded with hot tears. It hurt. It hurt so much. He was trembling from the pain, but he didn't forget what he should do next. He sent forth his spiritual energy, drawing the surging demonic chi within Lo Binghei's body into himself. This technique was incredibly stupid, but it was also incredibly effective. As Lo Binghe was supplying Jinmo with demonic chi, by drawing a portion of it into himself, it no longer received enough power, and so my Ridge's descent naturally couldn't continue. Shin Qingzhou took that object as it viciously slammed in and out, his whole twitching. Nothing had ever been breached this place before, and the tender flesh of his walls was rubbed raw and swollen. Initially, the thrusts had been slightly jerky, but with the spates of burning pain, blood and fluids gradually provided enough lubrication to smooth out their joining. Within the darkness, the wafting stench of blood pervaded around them. Pained, suppressed gasps and the sound of flesh slapping on flesh rang especially clear. Lo Binghe was enthusiastic, clutching at Shin Qingzhou and refusing to let go. His cheek rubbed against Shin Qingzhou's head, the action both docile and meek. But his bottom half had already told an entirely different story and could have been called savage. Shin Qingzhou could barely breathe within his grasp, and his right hand clawed at the rocky ground, leaving behind trails of blood. Each breath, he struggled to draw, stuttered, and caught as he gasped down the air. He couldn't hold on. He really couldn't hold on anymore. Just as his head swam, his vision growing dark and darker, a faint beam of light flashed by him. There was a crisp clang of something hitting the ground, right next to Shin Qingzhou's bare shoulder. Alarmed, Lo Binghe looked up, and for a brief moment he seemed disoriented. It's probably the jade. Then his pupils abruptly shrank into pinpoints. The blurry scene before him gradually focused and came together, becoming clearer and clearer. He slowly lowered his head, and all the color drained from his face on the spot. Shin Qingzhou lay below him, his robes torn into countless pieces. His legs were trembling, unable to close, his eyes frightfully red like he was on his last breath. Lo Binghe reached out, wanting to touch him, but also not daring to. His hand remained frozen in midair as he mothered Shizun. Once he heard Lo Binghe finally calling him Shizun as normal, Shin Qingzhou seemed to come alive, and he gasped in a breath. Unfortunately, due to how much strained his breath was, it almost sounded like a sob. Lo Binghe was stunned. Shizun, what did I do? Shin Qingzhou wanted to clear his throat, to lighten the mood a little and say something like, "Oh, you didn't do much, just your Shizun." However, the result was that he didn't manage to clear his throat and coughed up a large mouthful of blood. Both of them froze in shock at the sight. Shin Qingzhou's tears hadn't had the chance to come out before Lo Binghe's began falling first. They plopped onto Shin Qingzhou's cheek, sliding down the curve of it. In the past, Shin Qingzhou's greatest fear had been women crying, and now his greatest fear was Lo Binghe crying. He ignored the pain in his bottom half and wiped at Lo Binghe's face, comforting him like he was soothing a child. "Oh, don't cry, Lo Binghe's tears felt like pearls cut from the string, rolling down his shoulder. He helplessly held Shin Qingzhou with one arm while muttering, "Shizun, don't hate me, I didn't know. I never wanted to hurt you. Why didn't you push me away? Why didn't you kill me?" Shin Qingzhou stroked his back gently again and again. This master knows. This master was willing. He soothed him, but within his heart was endless bleakness. He was the one who'd been wrecked, all right? So how come the guy who wrecked him was crying harder than he was? What was this reversal where the guy who got fucked had to comfort the one who had fucked him? A Lo Binghe who lost his virginity was even more demanding than a young maiden who'd lost hers. Then if you'd pull out first, Shin Qingzhou said helplessly. Lo Binghe's eyelashes still hung heavy with tears, but he couldn't afford to worry about his shyness or how he wasn't done crying and he pulled out with utmost care. He stared blankly at the horrible sight between Shinshingcho's legs, his face growing increasingly pale. Even so, he carefully tidied Shinshingcho's inner robe, and draped his own outer robe on top of him. Shinshingcho didn't dare look down on himself. He slowly closed his legs, the muscles of his face twitching as he did so. Still, he did his best to school his expression into something less pained. To divert Lo Binghei's gaze and attention, Shinshingcho reached out and picked up the jade Guanyin beside him, and then gestured at Lo Binghei to lower his head. Lo Binghei stammered, I thought I had long since lost it. I never thought I'd find it again. Shinshingcho helped to loop the red string around his neck. We'll hold on to it from now on and don't lose it again. After Shizun rescued me that time, could it be that he's kept it with him ever since? Lo Binghei mumbled. It could have been in the system storage system for the entire time, so saying that he couldn't be considered wrong, right? I mean, once he thought this, Shinshingcho feebly nodded once. Lo Binghei's arm, my dogs. Lo Binghei's arm around him slowly tightened. As his tears continued to flow, he suddenly noticed that the marks on his arm were rapidly receding. His blazing hot forehead and cheeks were also cooling at an incredible speed. Stunned, he said, "What are you doing?" Shinshingcho hugged him firmly, forcefully locking Lo Binghei into the crook of his arm so he couldn't flail around. "I'm not doing anything," he said lowly. "Like I told you, it'll stop hurting soon. So be good and don't move." Lo Binghei's voice cracked. "Shizun, are you going to do what you did last time and use your own body to draw away Jinmo's demonic chi?" The last time he was referring to was when Shinshingcho had self-detonated. It must have left an enormous impact on him. "It's different this time," Shinshingcho said. Lo Binghei slowly clenched his fist. "Well, different how?" he asked, voice quavering. "Shizun, how can you do this to me? To think you would actually do the same thing a second time for the sake of other people. Do you feel that I can watch you do this sort of thing right before me again? I should have realized long ago that none of you would ever choose me. Every single one of you would rather throw me away. Oh my God! Listen to me, Lo Binghei!" Shinshingcho said severely. Sure enough, Lo Binghei held back his tears and obediently listened. "In order to give birth to you, Su Zhiyan fought to the death. Lo Binghei! Oh, Lo Binghei! Why did you never consider it? Given the kind of person the old palace master was, would he have given his disciple a gentle, harmless drug? It must have been a drug that was absolutely fatal to demons. If she really had given in and obediently taken it, even if you hadn't died, how could you have peacefully grown up unharmed into who you are today?" Lo Binghei's shoulders trembled. Shinshingcho made sure to emphasize every word. "If I were her, no matter how venomous that drug was, I would have drunk it down without hesitation, and then escaped the water prison. Afterwards, I would draw all its effects into my own body, no matter how agonizing the process, no matter if the price would be the complete destruction of my martial aspect, no matter if it meant a horrible death, I would absolutely not allow my child to suffer even an ounce of harm. This is my conclusion. You can think it's only a theory, because there's no longer anyone who can tell you that Su Zhiyan was thinking before she breathed her last. But if she really had seen you as her shame, she wouldn't have needed to do a thing. Those were the coldest days of the year, with ice and snow everywhere. If she'd thrown you into the low river, how could you have survived? Or she could have kept her bright and boundless future as head disciple of Huanhua Palace and continue to drink any fresh poison the old palace master gave her. Then she wouldn't need to flee the prison in disgrace or hide from the Huanhua Palace disciples who searched for her. Moreover, if, after giving birth to you on that lone ship, she hadn't taken off her outer robe and swaddled you in it, if she hadn't used the last of her strength to place you in that basin and push you out and away, you never would have lasted long enough for someone to rescue you. You would have been a mere lone spirit frozen to death upon the low river. Well, you're alive right here and now, so how can you just listen to and believe what others say when they claim your mother was cold and heartless and that she didn't truly want you? Having said this all in one go, Shinshingcho was now short of breath, and there was the sensation of demonic chi rampaging through his limbs and bones. He used his remaining strength to clutch Lo Binghei's wrist. I'm not drawing away Jinmo's energy, his evil energy, for anyone else or anything else. I do it for you and only you, he said. I don't want to see a Lo Binghei who spends the rest of his life controlled by Jinmo, whose mind is lost to its corrosion with illusions haunting him for all eternity. This master's expectations are for you to be alive and clear-minded, strong and healthy. Then he said softly, so don't say that no one wants you, or that no one will choose you ever again. As Lo Binghei knelt by Shinshingcho's side, his eyes could finally bear the weight of his tears no longer, and they rolled down his face like a child who'd been wronged. He had only ever been a child, walking the world alone, tripping and stumbling countless times, wanting only those few things, yet never able to grasp them. If only Shinshingcho had realized this earlier, he thought, he'd have definitely. But like he said before, within this world there had never been such a thing as if only I had known. Lo Binghei suddenly broke out into a tearful smile. He grabbed Shinshingcho's hand with his own and held it to his cheek, and then with the other hand he picked up Jinmo from the ground. The blade, still circulating with purple light, let out a terrifying shriek. Next to Shinshingcho there came the sound of something tearing inch by inch. Shizune, I know why you said all those things. Lo Binghei stared unswervingly at Shinshingcho, the corner of his mouth tugging up a little. However, if Shizune is no longer here, if the only person in this world who holds those expectations for me no longer exists, then me being alive and clear-minded, healthy and strong, well, what meaning would any of that have? Lo Binghei's fever seemed to have infected him too. Shinshingcho was feeling a little dizzy. In his daze, he almost couldn't hear what Lo Binghei was saying anymore, and he was unable to stop Lo Binghei as he destroyed the sword. Dimly, he had the thought that this was fine. Dying together also included a together. It didn't seem that bad. But then a voice came that he could still hear clearly. Congratulations! By hitting target values in all categories, the honored customer has been upgraded to a beginner-level VIP account. Would you like to activate the high-level ability of self-saving? Because if they destroy the sword, it kills him, doesn't it? Oh, I am... Ah! I'm not with it! Yeah, so then... Chapter 81. Proud Immortal Demon Way was a male power fantasy of a stallion novel. I've got to get myself together before I read this. What the fuck? Are we starting over? What? Oh my god. Ugh. Chapter 81. Proud Immortal Demon Way was a male power fantasy of a stallion novel. Since the very beginning, the author, Great Master Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky, had been very certain when it came to this matter. Furthermore, Shinchingsho was an unabashed straight man, one whose straightness the heavens themselves could attest to. Since his birth, he had also been very certain when it came to this matter. So, if back when he just opened this baffling book, this proud immortal demon way, which was so full of landmines that it was practically high art, to the point that those landmines had become its very style, if back then someone had said to Shinyan, "Oh, you'll go gay. Plus, you'll be going gay with the novel's male lead, and on top of that, you'll even lie down and surrender yourself to him," he would definitely have grabbed the brick that was the entire 50-volume set and showed them what their brains looked like when splattered across the ground. Now, he drifted within the virtual space he'd passed through back when he first entered the world. And he was listening to the system's friendly Google Translate-like voice, the same as always been echoing in every corner. "Greetings. Through your tireless efforts and active cooperation, all point values have met their upgrade targets. The system is very pleased to inform you that this honored customer has already been upgraded to a beginner-level VIP account. At this time, we will specially remind you that VIP accounts may activate the high-level ability, Self-Saving. In the event that your HP bar falls below the lowest possible value, you have a one-time opportunity to restore your life bar to full." Restore his life bar to full? The VIP treatment is really fucking kind, huh? "About that," said Shinchingsho, "this self-saving ability can only be used once, and only on myself. Your understanding is correct." An incredibly serious problem instantly occurred to Shinchingsho. He'd already drawn the majority of Lo Binghei's demonic chi into himself, so even if Jinmo was destroyed, it wouldn't affect Lo Binghei. However, because they both thought he probably was done for, that child had sobbed about wanting to die with him as well. If Shinchingsho used this self-saving ability, Lo Binghei had better not go and foolishly kill himself to be with him. Don't go all Romeo and Juliet! "What about Lo Binghei?" Shinchingsho asked urgently. "How is he now?" "With your present access, you are not permitted to inquire about issues related to the central power source. Would you like to see your achievement history?" Why couldn't he inquire if he was already a VIP member? Shinchingsho was out of his mind with worry, but if he couldn't, he couldn't. And if the system wouldn't let him, it wouldn't let him. No matter how anxious he was, it was useless. The system persisted restlessly. "Would you like to see your achievement history?" So basically, he had no choice but to look at the thing. So Shinchingsho waved his hand. I'll look. Now hurry up and show me." Accompanied by a burst of joyful, bubbly background music, the system unrolled a list of achievements. Avoided more than 20 landmines. The laden with landmines tag was removed. Unlocked the achievement, rather a lot of things to roast. Highest B point balance exceeded 5,000. Unlocked the achievement, readable if nothing else is available. Encountered more than 3 explosions of third-rate melodrama. Unlocked the achievement, mired in melodrama. Cut away extra padding and irrelevant side plots. The peerless god of filler tag was removed. Patched in all hidden characters and filled in all basic plot holes. The holes everywhere tag was removed. Total satisfaction points surpassed countable limits. Unlocked the achievement good enough for a jerk-off. You achieved the system's recommended standards. A one-line summary. The story of a lovesick, love-deficient Shunibyo who tried to destroy the world. When Shinchingsho read this line, he could only stare in silence. What kind of rebuttal could he even make to that? Goodbye. Thinking about it more closely. Ever since he'd entered this book, Proud Immortal Demon Way really had been transfigured from a male fantasy stallion novel with no bottom line into a convoluted, hyper-melodramatic love story full of ups and downs, starring a pure-hearted nut job of a male virgin. Looking at this column of sparkling awards, Shinchingsho suddenly realized that in the top corner of the list was a small pink symbol. He knew that the one symbol meant male while the one meant female, and he thought this was a bit strange. What does this symbol refer to? It indicates that all the achievements on this list are women-oriented honors. You've got to be kidding. Proud Immortal Demon Way's genre has already been revised. Wait, why has it been categorized as women's fiction? So that was why this bizarre melodramatic storyline had still managed to acquire so many awards, because it's already been categorized as women oriented, and so it's been scored according to the standards of women's fiction. And why did women's fiction have an achievement like good enough for a jerk off? What were they jerking off? Could it be that the story had been moved from Zongdian literature's main site to the women's section? Or even more terrifying, after changing sites entirely, had it been tossed into the infamous Green Sea of Xinjiang? At this moment, upon realizing the truth, a giant mouthful of blood, which Shinshingcho had been keeping down since the first day of transmigration, which he'd managed to suppress for many years, finally sprayed out like a fountain. With this, a crowd of dark faces zeroed in on him, robes rustling. Ning Yingying, Ming Fan, Qi Qingqi, Mu Qingfeng, an entire gaggle of people squeezed right up to him, all talking at once and saying things like, "Oh no, Shizun, coughed up blood, will Shizun die?" And, "Oh no, once he's coughed it up, he'll be fine." Cold, damp walls surrounded them. Via the two small candles, Shinshingcho just managed to recognize the location as the Lingxi Caves when the bouncing echoes made his head spasm with pain. He couldn't hear anything clearly and hunched over, clutching his head. Then came Liu Qingge's voice, "Go away, all of you!" As soon as he spoke, everyone else immediately shut up. The junior generation stuck out their tongues and retreated unhappily. The space they left behind was taken up by Liu Qingge. He stood next to the stone bed, his arms crossed. Having finally seen someone reliable, Shinshingzhou grabbed him. "Where's Lo Binghe?" Liu Qingge's face was dark. "He is dead." Dead? Had he really gone and foolishly committed a lover's suicide? Liu Qingge didn't seem to be telling a joke, and neither had he ever really joked around. Shinshingzhou abruptly sat up, but his movements were simply too fast, and a dull pain suddenly radiated from his bottom half. His face twisted immediately, and then with a thump he fell back down. The reaction of his was way too over the top. Liu Qingge seemed to have received a massive shock, and he stumbled back 3 steps. Then he turned about awkwardly as if he wanted to walk back up and say something, but also like he just wanted to up and flee. Qi Qingqi grabbed him. "Well, look at what you've done," she shrieked. Look what you did. What did you do that for? We told you not to scare him, and now you've gone and scared him so much that he fainted." While lying on the stone bed, Shinshingzhou raised his hand. "I didn't faint. It was just that a certain place hurt, so he slipped." In the past, little had scared Ning Yingying more than the Bison Peak Lord, but this time she bravely snapped at Liu Qingge, stomping her feet. "Liu Shishu, how could you do that? Even if you don't like Alo, you know Shizun had just woken up, and he can't take too much excitement, and you still said something so irresponsible, cursing him by claiming he's dead." Mu Qingfeng's face was so full of reproach. "Liu Shizhong, you really shouldn't act like that towards a patient. It's not good at all." This was Liu Qingge's first mass scolding. He'd never been good with words, so he simply retreated to the table and burst out with, "Well, I'm not talking anymore." Shinshingzhou pressed one hand to his temple and the other on his waist. "Someone tell me already, is he dead or not?" "He's not," Qin Qingqi said. "That brat thought you were done for and almost tried to follow you, but right before, Mu Shidi said you were fine and still breathing. How could he bear to die then?" Thank God they hadn't passed each other by another twist of fate. No one could take another one of these unfortunate coincidences. Shinshingzhou knew that Liu Qingge had just been venting his anger, but he really had been scared stiff for a few seconds. "Peak Lord Liu, could you not?" he criticized him, feeling like he'd lost some face. "I asked you first because I trust you. You really disappointed me." Liu Qingge glared at him. Shinshingzhou wasn't afraid of him glaring. He slowly sat back up and picked a position that wouldn't put too much painful pressure on the key body part in question. "What exactly happened? How did I return to Qijing Peak? What happened to Maigu Ridge? Where's Lo Binghe?" "Don't worry about Maigu Ridge," said Qingqi. "It exploded some time ago." "Exploded?" Shinshingzhou echoed. "Didn't you and Lo Binghe destroy Jinmo within Maigu Ridge?" Qingqi asked. "When the sword broke, the entire mountain exploded." Ming Fan popped his head in at his bedside. Well, that's right, Shizun. Half the mountain smashed into the ice and left a huge hole, and afterward the low river thawed. You and Lo Binghe both fell into it, and it was Liu Shizhu who fished the two of you out. Shin Qingqiu was in the process of taking the tea that Ning Yingying had offered and getting ready to drink it. Good thing he hadn't, because otherwise he'd have spewed it everywhere, the two of us. Shin Qingqiu guiltily glanced at Liu Qingge out of the corner of his eye. If he hadn't remembered wrong, how could you misremember something like that? He and Lo Binghe had just finished doing that thing. Though Lo Binghe had put on his robe on Shin Qingqiu after, the proof of guilt would have remained on his body, and with Liu Qingge's razor-sharp vision, it had been no stranger if he hadn't seen anything wrong. No wonder Liu Qingge had been looking at him with such a severe expression the entire time, like he was raring for some disciplinary action. Shin Qingqiu had been offended public decency and brought shame to their sect. He finished up the two of you in one go. Shi Qingqi prattled on. You were clutching each other like stiff corpses, impossible to separate. So many people were watching. Aren't you ashamed? Our respected Sangzhong Mountain. So they've been in plain view of everyone. Well, that was really... Shin Qingqiu was filled with 10,000 regrets. Ever after all his efforts, he still hadn't been able to stop the regret of Chen Shan from acquiring new material. But to think that Lo Binghe, with his thought process, hadn't simply gone and absconded with him. He'd even docilely sent him back to Qijing Peak. This was really profoundly strange. Thinking this too unusual, Shin Qingqiu persisted in his question. Well, where exactly is Lo Binghe now? In the end, it was still Ning Yingying who was the most obedient and filial. Well, Shizun, you slept for so many days without waking up, so of course he went to look for spirit herbs for you. Look for spirit herbs? By some great stroke of luck, Shin Qingqiu had escaped certain death and come back with a full life bar. And that brat hadn't knelt by his bed waiting for him to wake, but had left to run about? Well, this sort of trivial matter shouldn't be foisted upon. This sort of trivial matter should be foisted upon by your lackeys. Ning Yingying then muttered quietly, well, wasn't it because all the Shishu and Shibo chased him off the mountain? Shin Qingqiu didn't even bother pretending to be cold and aloof. Unable to keep his face still, he let out a stifled laugh. Lo Binghe had offended far too many Sangzhong Mountain Sect members, so it made sense that they had to run him off. But now Lo Binghe actually understood to swallow his anger in words and let himself be chased away. It was honestly pretty pitiful. However, as long as nothing was wrong, that was good. Well, like hell nothing was wrong. Shin Qingqiu's face paled with horror. Oh, Zhengmin Xizhong! How could he have forgotten? There was still the matter of Yu Qingyan, and who had been at death's door. He rushed to flip himself back upright and then stuffed his feet in his shoes and ran outside. The others hadn't expected him to suddenly jump out of bed, and they were all stunned for a moment, but they ran after him. Mu Qingfang called, oh, Shin Xizhong, you really should lie back down. In a single breath, he'd run out of the Lijing caves, the crisp, damp fragrance from the mountains suffusing his nose. Suddenly, a glittering bloom of golden fireworks exploded at the far edge of a pitch-black night sky. When he listened carefully, he heard the clamor of voices drifting from over Qijing Peak. What's going on? Shin Qingqiu asked as he put his shoes on properly. Why is there so much noise coming from the Changding Peak? Where's Zhengmin Xizhong? Qi Qingxing straightened her crooked bodice and said peevishly, so you did remember to ask after Zhengmin Xizhong a little. He's alive. Mu Qingfang smiled. Shin Xizhong, you woke up at the perfect time. You won't miss the celebration. Upon hearing that Yu Qingyang was safe and sound, Shin Qingqiu breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed like Yu Qingyang drawing his sword in the fight on Maigu Ridge hadn't consumed his entire life force. If it had, Shin Qingqiu really wouldn't have known how to live with himself. And he couldn't say if anyone else knew Shahansu's secret. His musings took a turn, and then, being incredibly big-headed, he thought, what celebration? Could it be to celebrate him waking up? There was no need to go to such efforts and make it this grand. Well, now he was embarrassed. Liu Qingge seemed to have guessed Shin Qingqiu's thoughts, and he verbally slapped his face without hesitation. It's to celebrate the successful prevention of the merge. Nothing to do with you! Oh, can't you just celebrate a little bit for me on the side? Shin Qingqiu asked sheepishly. Since it was the kind of grand celebration held for a major event, where the entire world joined on in the jubilation, naturally the participants included more than the members of Sangzhong Mountain Sect. All the sects that had been participated in the battle at Low River, both large and small, had been invited. Shijing Peak was the hubbub of voices, packed tightly with people as they jostled one another. Shinshingcho even saw quite a few familiar faces. Those beautiful Taoist nun triplets were pestering a person with sweet and gentle words. In fact, it was a person who wore a veil, looking cool and elegant, who radiated an atmosphere of integrity, Liu Mingyan. When Shinshingcho observed Lo Binghei's harem together now, not a one of them to be bested in beauty, he was filled with an intensely curious feeling. He looked on intently the way he always had, though he could no longer hold on to a male fantasy mentality while doing so. He sent 2 more side glances at them and only heard those 3 sisters say coquettishly, "Oh, good sister, good master, good senior, please give us an autograph. We went through so much difficulty to meet the author. Please leave us a memento." Is it truly to be discontinued with no further reprints? Within their grasps, they held a small, gaudy book, which they pushed into Liu Mingnan's hands. It looked incredibly familiar. Shinshingcho puzzled over it to himself and felt it merited his attention. He was just thinking about walking closer to see what those 3 giant words on the cover were when suddenly a skulking silhouette flashed by him. Shinshingcho took a couple of steps to catch up to that person and grab them. "You still have the guts to come to Shijing Peak?" he asked in a chilly voice. "You're not afraid of Chi-Ching-Chi cutting you into pieces?" Having been caught, Shang Chihuahua almost fell to his knees on the spot. But when he heard Shinshingcho, he breathed a long sigh of relief. "Oh, why be like this, cucumber bro?" he asked as he turned around. "Oh, no matter what, the 2 of us are comrades from the same hometown, friends forged in the heat of battle. Oh, don't be so quick to chase me out. Since you dared to come to Sangzhong Mountain, I assume you've already succeeded at whitewashing your reputation." "Correct," said Shang Qinghua. "I was afraid I'd scare you if I said so. I might soon return to being the Anding Peak Lord. It's all thanks to Bingay. May he live long and prosper." "Yu Qingyang is taking you back?" "This is called the prodigal son's return. The wayward heir mending his ways. Besides, I've never done anything to offend the heavens, so why wouldn't he take me back?" Shinshingqiu let go of him and said angrily, "Sheng Minjijang is simply too kind." Sheng Qinghua straightened his collar. Why else would he be so unfortunate? Kind people get taken advantage of." Shinshingqiu looked him up and down. "Due to all my blind fumbling around, your entire novel has been distorted beyond recognition, but you don't seem unsatisfied at all." "I wouldn't say that," said Shang Qinghua. "Maybe to you it was only a blind fumbling that was as worthless as shit, but to Bingay, your blind fumbling might be the only meaning to this world's existence." To think that great master airplane shooting towards the sky could say such words. Shinshingqiu was horrified. "And who is this distinguished gentleman?" "Don't be like that," Shang Qinghua said seriously. "I, too, am a young man with literary ideals, so of course I have my own thoughts and regrets." Shinshingqiu sneered. "What literary ideals? How come the only thing I could see in your book was fan service with no bottom line? And your writing speed of 10,000 words a day with intermittent bursts of 20,000? That was your appeal. Without those underlying components, Proud Immortal Demon Way could never have made it past early serialization." Shang Qinghua shrugged. "Do you think I started out writing things with no moral integrity or bottom line? In the past, I wrote works of pure literature, but every single one flopped. And I could only start down the road of mass market products. You must know that writing a novel is a lonely thing. Compared to the kind of writing of stallion guys whose everywhere is on Zongdian, it's better to portray a male lead like the current Bingay, whose life is full of mishaps, whose personality is a bit more complex and full of contradictions and conflicts than that kind of weirdo. That's more in line with my writing philosophy." "So your writing philosophy is about writing gays?" Shinshingqiu concluded. "Are you looking down on gay protagonists? The arts and artists love portraying gays. Pure literature highly favors gays. You know that, right?" Shang Qinghua raised his arms high. "Cucumber bro," he said impassioned. "If the system hadn't selected you, a loyal and diehard reader, I'm afraid the plot would never have been distorted to this extent. Right back to the outline I discarded. I wasn't able to withstand the loneliness in real life and caved to the financial pressure, and so I chose to finish Proud Immortal Demon Way in accordance with others' tastes. However, thanks to you, everything that I wanted to write has already played out before me. Cucumber bro!" He clapped Shinchingsho's shoulder solemnly, filled with deep emotion. You are the chosen one, and my career is at last wiped clear of regrets. Why did that make it sound like the system and this world were the creation of Shang Qinghua's regrets? As an author who'd had to scrap his outline in favor of popular opinion. Shen Qingzhou found the idea of becoming this kind of chosen one too shameful. Who's your diehard reader? Shang Qinghua waved. Well, I won't talk to you about this, he said, unilaterally declaring his victory. You're an anti-fan. Shen Qingzhou was about to say, I'm only an anti, not a fan. But then suddenly he heard Shang Qinghua humming something like, love warms, grace weighs, our lips come together. I wish this night would last into the morn, all day, the night, unto eternity. The important part was that the tune was incredibly familiar. So familiar that Shen Qingzhou's hands and teeth itched. He pointed at Shang Qinghua. Shang Qinghua, what are you humming? Shang Qinghua continued to hum. We know not when the day becomes the next, nor when Zhang Yin's sun will finally rest. The rustle of autumn, Zhuya unsheathed, icy water gushes forth, choked sobs we plead, unfulfilled and we start again. Shen Qingzhou is in disbelief. Fuck you, I dare you to sing another line. Master Shen, why don't you listen to others? You absolutely must not fuck other people. Bingay will lose it. Let me tell you, right now, this regret of Chunshan has become something like the 18 touches. The two of you are legendary gays known nationwide, get it? You can go ahead and shut me up. I don't care, because ultimately it'll be useless. You can't shut the mouths of everyone beneath the heavens. At last, Shen Qingzhou beat the crap out of Shang Qinghua the way he always wanted to. This asshole! This giant asshole! This kind of plot-digging author who not only refused to fill his holes, but left everything unfinished, who rejoiced as his characters jumped the shark all the way to Siberia, who even dragged his reader in to patch up his work, saying, you can, you up, really deserved to be beaten to death. He was just about ready to drag the whimpering airplane shooting towards the sky, currently prone like a corpse, into a small patch of pitch-black forest so he could continue with said beating when he heard a familiar voice chanting Amitabha behind him. A Chinese folk song with several variants, famous for its risque nature, leading it to have been banned multiple times. Master Wu Qin said, Oh, Sheik Lord Pin is safe and sound, truly 1,000 fortunes. Shen Qingzhou straightened and turned around to see the two abbots from Zhaohua Monastery together with Yu Qingyan, slowly walking in his direction. He tossed Shang Qinghua aside and tidied himself up a bit, and then smiled serenely from his heart. Sincerely, Zhang Minzhizhong, Master Wu Qin, Master Wu Wang. There was no trace of weakness in Yu Qingyang's complexion as he smiled back. Wu Wang sent Shen Qingzhou a side glance and then walked off somewhere else, full of disdain. He had the expression of an old Taoist full of toxic feudal-era ideals who had just seen a fallen woman. Shen Qingzhou felt like he'd been struck by lightning and shivered. Please don't mind Wu Wang, Xizhong Peak Lord Shen, said Master Wu Qin. Ever since this one lost his legs at Jinlan City, he's been filled with hatred towards the demon race, to the point where even Peak Lord Shen Qingzhou rubbed his nose and said indifferently, it's fine. Being disdained by a bald old donkey didn't matter much. Although, Master Wu Qin said, he's gotten much better now. In the period Tianlong Jun has been staying in the Zhaohua Monastery, he's never given him a hard time. Your honored monastery took Tianlong Jun into custody? Said Shen Qingzhou. Not really custody, said Master Wu Qin. This one only wishes to freely discuss Buddhism with him, while also helping to relieve the decay of the dew mushroom body. He'll stay for a couple of years until he's stabilized, and then he can go wherever. At that time, whether he wishes to continue wandering the human realm or prefers to take Zhu Xilong's bones, and return to the demon race will all be up to him. This one believes there is no anger within him. Even if there had been once, it's since dispersed. Master Wu Qin's legs had been destroyed by the sowers in Jinlan City, and the sowers had been sent by Tianlong Jun. Yet he hadn't taken this incident to heart at all. Shen Qingzhou's heart couldn't help but well with admiration. On top of that, the master's compassion was neither haphazard nor carelessly bestowed. At their final goodbye, Shin Qingqiu had also felt Tianlong Jun no longer had any interest in destroying the world. From the start, it wasn't what he really wanted to do or something he'd liked doing. It was just, now that there was no Zhu Long to foolishly follow him around and foot his bills, beat away any miscellaneous soldiers, or collect interesting pocketbooks for him, it was probably inevitable that at times he'd feel sad. Just like the Shin Qingqiu at present. Zaohua monastery monks left first and walked towards the Shiding Hall. But even though he was the sect leader, Yu Qingyang didn't go with them. Instead, he stood in place, silently staring at Shin Qingqiu, and for some reason, it had become comparatively more awkward. As if testing the waters, Yu Qingyang said, "Zhao Zhu." "Xizhang," said Shin Qingqiu. "It's Qingqiu." Even though it would be too difficult to tell Yu Qingyang the truth, Shin Qingqiu still hoped he could demonstrate the difference in other ways. Yu Qingyang was stunned for a bit, and then he gave a small smile. It's Qingqiu. Qingqiu Shidi." Shin Qingqiu looked at Zhang Su at his waist. He had yet to speak when Yu Qingyang spontaneously said himself, "Shidi need not worry. After a few more months of secluded cultivation, all should be well for a time." "Then Zhangmin Shizhang must not impulsively draw his sword in the future," said Shin Qingqiu. "One's cultivation can be improved. More breakthroughs can always be achieved, but one's life force can never be returned." Yu Qingyang gently shook his head. One's life force is not the only thing that cannot be returned. The two of them walked slowly towards Shangding Hall. Along the way, they heard the joyful laughter of young disciples and the burst of fireworks overhead. "What are your plans for the future?" asked Yu Qingyang. "I have no plans for the time being," said Shin Qingqiu. "First, I'll wait for Lo Binghe to return and see how he's doing." Yu Qingyang smiled. "You truly adore that disciple." Shin Qingqiu was searching for a way to answer when Yu Qingyang said, "Shidi, Sangjiang Mountain will forever be a place to which you can return whenever you're tired of wandering the outside world." Those words were said with utmost sincerity and solemnity. Yu Qingyang had always been this way. Whatever he promised, he would definitely deliver. And what he couldn't deliver, he would endeavor to make up for, no matter the cost. After assuming the role of this novel character, Shin Qingqiu had always refused to become the Scum villain from the original work. He'd drawn a clear boundary between them and had taken great pride in walking the opposite path. So never before had he felt such a powerful and impulsive thought. If only he really were Shinju. If only that person could really hear these words. Shin Qingqiu's steps became slower and slower when suddenly, like he'd sensed something, he raised his head and looked into the distance. On the other side of the crowd, right before it, was Lo Binghe. He stood at the foot of the white stone steps leading to Qiding Peak's main hall. He stood utterly alone, without a single person beside him. When the people walking past saw his face, their own faces filled with all sorts of expressions. Shin Qingqiu involuntarily ran forward a couple steps and then turned his head to look at the person behind him. "Go on," said Yu Qingyang. He stood behind Shin Qingqiu, silent and with good grace. It was as if one was the past and the other the future. One year, the demon race had not known what was good for itself, and so had come to Shangding Peak to provoke them with a show of strength. They'd spent a good chunk of time smashing, hitting, burning, and plundering, and even smashed a bunch of floor tiles with a hammer. Lo Binghe was staring at a crack between the white tiles on the ground when he heard a familiar snap of a fan opening. A pair of white shoes stepped onto the stone crack, which was already spotted with green moss. He abruptly raised his head. Shin Qingqiu waved his fan. "Don't say a word. First, let this master ask you. As a disciple, why did you not respectfully wait for your Shizun to wake up, but instead go run about the outside world?" Lo Binghe forced down his excited expression, suppressing himself. "No one on Sangjiang Mountain welcomes my presence, so I can only secretly come to check in from time to time. Just now, I didn't see Shizun in the Lingji caves, and I thought that they'd hidden Shizun away or that Shizun had left again." As Shin Qingqiu listened to this meek defense, he couldn't help but remember what Shang Qinghua had just said. If he hadn't gone around pestering and harassing everyone and everything, perhaps Lo Binghe really would have darkened to the core and become the young man in the original work. Someone who'd rend a person to a human stick with his bare hands, who'd curse the world and himself. Although now, instead, he'd become a lovesick young man, so it really wasn't that much better. But at least he'd gained some lovable qualities. Or at least, Shin Qingqiu had finally realized that he was quite fond of them. Shin Qingqiu sighed. You knew you weren't welcome, and you still dutifully sent me back to Sangzhong Mountain. Well, I thought that was when Shizun woke up, and he would definitely prefer seeing Sangzhong Mountain first. Without caring about his image, Shin Qingqiu broke character and smacked Lo Binghe's forehead with the fan. Resentful of Lo Binghe's actions, he said, "Oh, of course what this master most wanted was to see first was you." Lo Binghe had taken a thwack from a fan, but he was so excited that his entire face flushed red, his eyes becoming watery, like he wanted to speak but couldn't. Shin Qingqiu's entire body felt like it was going weak from his gaze. Then suddenly sounds of yelling and the clang of blades rose around them. Sorry. Give me just a second. Yang Yizhuan stood on the eaves of Xiangding Peak's main hall and shouted, "Sure enough, that demon ruffian came back to harass Shin Shibo." Hundreds of people responded to his call, and someone immediately shouted along with him, "That bastard still has the gall to show his face. Get your weapons. Where's my weapon? That's my sword, Zhizhong. Give it back. If you want to fight, go back and get yours." No wonder Lo Binghe hadn't hung around and waited for him to wake up. Merely showing his face on Sangzhong Mountain had people screaming their intent to attack him. The warmth of his welcome was eminently clear. Not bad. Your judgment was correct," Shin Qingqiu said helplessly. "Under these circumstances, sneaking in is indeed your only option." "I already said before that I wasn't welcome here," Lo Binghe said in a quiet voice. Shin Qingqiu patted his head. "That's fine. Shizun welcomes you." Chongding Peak clamored with roars for violence, some genuine, some insincere, raring to have a go. Just a bunch of people who craved nothing but havoc. In even greater numbers were the peaceful passerbys, all turning a blind eye to the devil in human form that was Lo Binghe. Shin Qingqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Ha! Funny to mention that now. "Why don't we leave then?" he asked. For a moment, Lo Binghe couldn't manage to react. "Leave?" Shin Qingqiu nodded. "Didn't you say you weren't welcome here?" "Then let's leave and go somewhere that does welcome you," he added. "This time, no matter where you wish to go, this master will accompany you." Lo Binghe's face had always appeared very quick and clever, but now his expression was thoroughly dumbfounded because of these few words. It was hard to look at. Other than Sangzhong Mountain's disciples, Chongding Peak was also packed with the cultivators from various sects who'd come to attend the celebration. On top of their senses being sharp, Shin Qingqiu had also deliberately refused to lower his voice. So, of course, everyone had heard him very clearly. As one, they all feigned ignorance. The ones who'd been watching the fireworks pointed and gestured at the sky, and the ones who'd been lightly chuckling now laughed loud enough to raise the roof. They were being very cooperative, showing consideration for Sangzhong Mountain's dignity. But Liu Qingge didn't appreciate this. He jumped down from the eaves and yelled at Shin Qingqiu, practically incoherent with rage. "Hey!" Qi Qingqing was beside herself with anger. "I don't care anymore. Go wherever you like. Shin Qingqiu, you, both of you. Mingyan, let's go. What are you looking at? What's there to see? Is this your first time bearing witness to such shamelessness? She may careful of your karma and your words. Mind the image of our respected Sangzhong Mountain." Exactly what deep-set images did Sangzhong Mountain have in the people's hearts outside of covering for the faults of their own? Their director of demolitions, their intimacy with demons, their master-disciple pair who'd starred in a famous porno? Shin Qingqiu considered this for a while and came up empty. Initially, he'd been pulling Lo Binghe along by the hand. Who knew when it had become Lo Binghe pulling him along instead? He felt those 5 fingers on the back of his hand slowly tighten, clamping down until it hurt. Lo Binghe gently raised his head, and the entire night sky, with its river of stars, sparkled in the depths of his pitch-black eyes. It was almost like if he wasn't careful, some glittering treasures would fall from them. Shinshingcho took this all in stride. Looking back on everything, his heart had been transformed, becoming like that of an old monk on a pilgrimage to retrieve scriptures. He'd suffered through 81 hardships, and after much pain and struggle, had finally produced the right result. So let him cry. After all, Lo Binghe always behaved this way. A plot with so many ups and downs, and such intense chaos and disorder, to the point that it was constantly like being struck by lightning on a clear day. Honestly, Shinshingcho also wanted to burst into tears. And with this peerlessly bizarre, book's complete and successful transformation, great master airplane shooting towards the sky. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back and reread that. And with this, I can't believe that we still have a whole volume, but it's supposedly done. And with this peerlessly bizarre book's complete and successful transformation, great master airplane shooting towards the sky's career was now doubtlessly devoid of regrets. And while the unparalleled ranting critic, Berliz Cucumber, could no longer say he disdained it the way he once had either, the author wouldn't fill in the plot holes. So this great one had been forced to take matter into his own hands. In the long river of history of great and mighty Zongdian stallion novels, what reader had led the charge like him? Heartily coughing up blood while putting himself on the line to fill in plot holes just to rescue the B points of a brainless power fantasy, a peerless marvel of a work that had the writing quality of a grade school essay. Even though the direction had gone a bit awry during said rescue process. At least he'd really managed to achieve you can you up, no can no BB. The moment Shinshingcho had flipped open Proud Immortal Demon Way, the story had begun. But as he shut Proud Immortal Demon Way, the story had yet to end. Or perhaps the story circulating throughout the world might have already ended. But the story between you and me has only just begun. Oh my God. Well, I'm going to need to go gather myself up before going any further. I'm not letting off any party poppers for this chapter set. I can't do it. I can't do it. Damn it. Oh, well, that was not what I expected, and I am heartbroken. This is complicated, and this is, and my dog's like distracting me, which might be a good thing. That will keep me from crying all over again. Oh. It's not how I thought it was going to go at all, and I'm guessing that volume 4 is just completely appendices. Because this is essentially the end of the story, right? We get 3 volumes, that's the end of the story. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. No, it's not a good thing. We needed this fleshed out more, honestly. I'm so frustrated with this end of this volume. These last 4 chapters have really frustrated me. And I'm very torn about them, if I'm being honest with you. I understand them. I understand their purpose. I get what MXTX is doing, but I don't know if I'm on board with them. I don't know. And maybe after reading volume 4, I will have a better understanding. So we're going to walk through it. I'm going to try not to cry because my heart was broken for Shinshingcho so hard this chapter set. And then some of the choices MXTX made, I'm like, well, why not? Why not? You know, why not? And then some I'm like, okay, well, that all makes sense. But all of this felt rushed, really rushed. And when I saw volume 4, I was like, oh, we'll have all of this time for them to communicate and talk to each other and flesh things out. And I'm sure maybe that's what they'll do. Maybe that's what they'll do next volume. They'll get their chance. But I really wish before they had sex that they'd had the chance to talk it out. But MXTX, I know why she did that whole scene, and it was heartbreaking. Like, it just made me so emotional. Oh my God. I'm going to try to get through it and talk with you all about it, but damn. It was really hard to get through. And I just was like, I was so heartbroken. And I know why MXTX was doing it and the point she's trying to make with it, and point taken. But that was rough. And it subverted my expectations, but I don't know if it did it in a good way. And so we're gonna have to walk through it and do that. But before we do, as I choked to death, this chapter set was gutting. So let's just go ahead and see what the last 2 chapters are called. Chapter 80 is called Key Item. Well, yes, the key item indeed that we have to get uploaded. And then chapter 81 is The Story Begins. Okay, sure. Now the story begins. Sure, I guess we'll talk about my problems with that. Oh my gosh. And again, these are all just my opinions with the writing. These are just my opinions. But there's some things I really liked about the ending of this story. Obviously, we still have volume 4 to go. If I can make it through, I don't even know, right? But there were some parts I really liked about this chapter set. But then there were parts I was like, this is clearly MXTX's first jaunt into noveling. And I think she gets a lot better with certain things in her writing as she goes through Modazushi and Heaven Official's Blessing. And honestly, this story was my favorite until these last 4 chapters. And now I don't know. And maybe, after volume 4, I will be able to reevaluate and reassess, but we need to talk through it. If I can talk, oh my God. But I think it's going to be that no matter what. I'm going to be upset no matter when I record this. So I just got to get through it with you all. So I'm sorry you have to listen to me sob through this, That's not my intent. And I am trying my hardest to stop, but I'm just really upset about it. So, okay. Let's back up and go back through to where we are as we get to this point in the chapter and this point in the series. So I guess one of my biggest things that kind of frustrates me about this novel in general, especially when we got to the last 2 chapters, is that Lo Binghe, granted, I guess my big thing is when Shin Shingsho goes back through the flashback of Shinju and meets Lo Binghe. Lo Binghe he's all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, right? And he's all like hopeful and everything. And it's the one act of OG Shin Shingsho pouring the tea on him, which distraughts him. And I know what you all are going to say. You're going to say, well, Lo Binghe also went through a lot of things before he met the original Shin Shingsho, that he was abused and passed over and blah, 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 and all this. That's fine. And I get that. And that's kind of, in the original novel, that's the catalyst for Lo Binghe kind of growing up with this trauma and this sense of, oh my God, there's like makeup and everything all over these glasses. But he grows up with this trauma and all of this. And that also helps shape him into who he is. And he has nobody that ever loves him. And no one loving him leads him to become this monster that he is. And I get that. But then in this story, Shin Yan comes into the picture. And Shin Yan, as Shin Shingsho, does cultivate this kindness around him and the others, right? We see Ning Yingying change. We see Ming Fan change. We see all these characters change for the better surrounding Shin Shingsho. And I'm like, yeah, great. And so Lo Binghe even, cultivates this admiration and romantic attraction to Shin Shingsho. Awesome. And it's still there. Nah. And that's great. So that when Shinshincho gets to the abyss, Shinshincho is operating with the understanding that when the system says you have to go through with the abyss, he's like, I've got to push him off the ledge like that happens in the original story. The system, mind you, doesn't ever tell Shinshincho, oh, you don't have to do it like you did before. And everybody's like, well, Shinshincho should have realized that he didn't have to. And I'm like, if you were in that same situation, you would probably think the same thing Shinshincho thought, because I thought that. I was like, well, the system says he has to do it, so he has to do it. And to be fair to Lo Binghe, Shinshincho should have communicated in that, oh my God, why is it all getting all, oh, it's that. I don't know why it's doing that. Shinshincho should have communicated in that moment what was going on, but he didn't know how to do that in a way to not reveal that he was the character in a novel. They got transmigrated there, so it led to that or whatnot. So he tosses him into the abyss. What gets me is that Shinshincho feels an immense amount of regret and sadness for what happens, and Lo Binghe, of course, feels betrayed and confused and doesn't know what's going on. And we've talked about volumes 2 and 3. We've talked about that at length and all the stuff with Lo Binghe and Shinshincho and that leading up there. But my thing was, there was the fog of misunderstanding, which is gone now. Apparently, that's one thing. I thought the fog of misunderstanding was going to be addressed and was going to have like a resolute end, and it doesn't. It's just not there anymore. And so I'm like, MXTX, that seems like a plot hole. That seems like something we should fill in, and maybe we will in volume 4. Maybe we will in volume 4. I don't know. That would be something. That was something I was like, we're not going to address that. That's just going to disappear. But you made it such a big deal out of it, back when it was introduced. Okay. But we don't mention it anymore. So I was like, all right. But my thing was that we kind of established that as they were going on, as, Shinshincho died twice. And you would think that Lo Binghe would be like, well, here's my thing. Shinshincho has the mentality of, oh, I'll never lose him again, and I don't want to lose him, and Lo Binghe says that he does, but then in the same breath, he's like, I still don't trust you. And I'm like, what? So that whole thing is that they start to work together, and then Lo Binghe does the whole, well, I still don't trust you. And I'm like, well, in Moulin Rouge, without trust, there is no love. So I'm like, it's just so... It feels so hypocritical to me in a way that Lo Binghe is like, well, I don't trust you, but I'll still defend the world against you. And I'm like, what in the world? So I don't like that Lo Binghe doesn't have any growth to his character. He's just like, oh, I'm just a demon lord that could blow off at any minute, but I love you. And I'm like, but you've got to communicate and grow and change, and it just doesn't feel like he did. Like, he was just like, this is how I am, and Shinshincho's like, well, shucks, I guess I still love you even though you've not grown and you're still the same. And I'm like, it was just so frustrating to me because it made it seem like Shinshincho has to do all the work in this relationship, and it's not mutual, it's not equal. It's just Shinshincho has to do all the work. He has to save the day. And then Lo Binghe's like, oh, well, I still love you. And he's like, you do. Now I'm going to do whatever you want. And I'm just like, that's not equal to me. That's not, the other two MXTX pairs I think work so much better together because there is that mutual understanding and that mutual love and that mutual, they talk through things and communicate and develop that relationship. And maybe in volume 4 we will get that, but we do not get that in this at all. It's literally Shinshincho has to sacrifice himself and do all the damn work, and Lo Binghe just sitting there like, okay, and then that's it. It's so frustrating to me. It is. And so the whole thing with Jinmo, I wish was a little bit more concrete, because by this chapter set, we do get the idea that Jinmo has taken over Lo Binghe, right? And that he is controlling him, right? And that's not Lo Binghe's fault. I wish that MXTX would have made it a little bit more apparent, or a little bit more, and I know people will be like, it was so clear and obvious that it was happening. Well, I wish she just wrote it better. That's all. That's what I wish. I wish it was written a little bit better. And then compared to her other works, I think that they are a little clearer. And maybe it's the translation. Maybe, I don't know. Something seemed off about it these last couple chapters and seemed rushed or forced. And it didn't feel like the other MXTX writing I'm used to. So I was like, but this is her first work. So she has matured and developed as a writer for the other works that I've read. So maybe that's part of it. And that's nothing against her. She's an amazing writer. But it was just very frustrating because his last two chapters seemed so like, to end the entire story, it seemed rather forced. And we'll talk about it throughout this. But Shin realizes that it's all tying back to the beginning, where it all ties back to the beginning, where Lo Binghe cures the poison from the girl by having sex with her, and then she becomes part of the harem, and that's, all lovey-dovey, ha ha ha, and isn't that funny? And then it's just solved. Shin realized at the start of this chapter, to get Jinmo's chi energy and absorb it into himself, he was going to have sex with Lo Binghe. And he had made amends with that and was like, okay, I'm going to do it to save the world, to stop the merge, and also to save Lo Binghe. That's what I'm going to do. That's fine. And it was consensual. I think what affected me so much is that I'm going to be not as emotional as I could be. So I've got to collect myself. But basically, in the moment, what had gotten me so riled up was that I've been a victim of assault myself, and that's really hard to visually see or read things that are, and I know that it was not a scene of rape. It wasn't. Shin knew what he was doing, but the way that it was portrayed was not romantic at all. It's not romantic. It's not meant to be romantic. And I swear, if somebody on Discord's like, look at the scene between them, wasn't it so great? I'm going to barf, because it was not sexual or romantic at all. It wasn't meant to be. What MXTX was doing in that moment was taking the fantasy stallion novel tropes of, the woman was taken by Lo Binghe in the moment and cured of her poison, and the virgin lost her virginity in that moment. Losing your virginity isn't usually the sunshine and roses scenario like people romanticize it in books and in things, especially like they didn't have any lube. There was no lube. There was no foreplay. It was just instant penetration, and it was horrifically portrayed. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't romantic. It was taking all of those stallion novel tropes and then showing like, yeah, the aphrodisiacs and all of the sex pollen and all of the stuff there, like it's all cutesy and fun in fiction. But then when you see it actually happening to the characters and you're treating them like people, then it's not fun. Then it's actually terrifying and really heartbreaking. And I think what made me so sad was that I had built up in my head this idea that they were going to talk it out in these final chapters of this volume. They were going to talk it out and realize, and I kept wanting Shin to have a conversation with Lo Binghe, and he kind of does for a hot second about Lo Binghe's mom, but he didn't continue it like I wanted him to. I wanted him to be like, bitch, what have I been doing this whole time? For you, like, let's count the ways. And to be like, I wanted Shin to lay it all out for him and be like, you're an idiot and you need to figure it out. But granted, there was no time, whatever, for him to do that. But I wanted him to talk with Lo Binghe to stop the miscommunication, to break it all down, break it apart, and then for them to kind of come to some understanding, and then for them to be like, well, this is what we've got to do. And I didn't expect Shin when I realized what was about to happen. I was like, oh, of course, this is what's going to stop Jinmo and save everybody. But I think that if I had wrote this, I would have had them talk things out and gotten onto a mutual playing field and had Shin be like, look, I know what you've suffered through. You've told me, and I know, but here's X, Y, and Z. And Lo Binghe needed to self-reflect and come to a conclusion. And I know people in the comments will say this, and I know the story had it to where Jinmo had possessed him and there really wasn't time for that. But that's how the novel made that moment. The novel got you into that corner, so then you can't get out of it. So I don't know if I would have made it to where we weren't in that corner, but then it's like, well, then how would the merge have been happening without Jinmo? So MXTX's writing all makes sense in that moment, but it was so rushed and abrupt that instead of having these two talk it out, come to a mutual understanding, and then save the world together, instead it's not like that at all, and it's heartbreaking. And you expect this couple to have this beautiful, like, tender moment at the end of the series together, and that was completely stripped away and taken from you. And Shin Shingsho didn't enjoy it. Lo Binghae didn't get it. I also feel bad for Lo Binghae because it's like Shin Shingsho didn't get to enjoy his first time at all. He was a virgin and he doesn't get to enjoy it. And then Lo Binghae is possessed by Jinmo. He doesn't get to enjoy it. He's drugged from Jinmo's energy. He doesn't know what's going on. So he doesn't get to enjoy it. Shin Shingsho doesn't get to enjoy it. Like, I was so heartbroken because I do care about these two characters and I want to ship them and support them, but it's like the story's not letting that happen. And I was like, oh my God, really? And that's what we're doing? And then that's what we did. And then I get why MXTX did it, and it is a powerful moment. It just sucks. It just sucks. And I know that's the point, but I'm not a angsty reader. So for me, this was not oh man, what amazing writing. I'm so glad. No, I was just like, this sucks. This is not pleasant to read or enjoyable at all. So I was like, son of a bitch. So then Shin Shingsho gets the one up, which we'll talk about. We'll go through this chapter set the best I can. He gets the one up from the system. And then I guess the thing about it was, we'll talk about this as well, he finds out that the genre's turned into a Danmai. And I'm guessing that's what the ending of the story begins. It's like, well, now now it almost feels as if that moment where they have sex is the story transitioning from being a stallion novel to being a Danmai. Like, here's all the bad things about the stallion novel, the things you don't like, the harsh reality of it when it's played out in real form. And maybe part of it too is that MXTX, because Shin Shingsho is a man who had identified as heterosexual but is having a change of heart, maybe throughout this, and I guess that's something else too, is that I know in my heart that Shin Shingsho might have always been homosexual, but I wish in that conversation with Shang Qinghua that was addressed more, because I'm not saying that the story is forcing Shin Yan to be gay, but there is a part of it that you can kind of read as that, where it's like, oh, well, it's changed into a Danmai, and in a Danmai, the protagonists are gay. So you're one of the protagonists, so now you have to be gay. And I know that there's been so many moments where we, the audience, are like, Shin Shingsho, you are gay. But it's like the story and MXTX doesn't quite make 100% certain that this was all from the start Shin Shingsho's choice. And maybe from the beginning, I know people in the Discord have shared lots of fan art that have showed Shin Yan in his room with all the Lo Binghae fan art and stuff. But do we know that that's technically true, or is that just kind of projected from the fandom? Do we know that that's true? I know there's so many examples of Shin Shingsho from the novel that is clearly attracted to Lo Binghae, and he's clearly been attracted to him from the start. So I guess it's true. I just wish MXTX had been a little bit more clear about that. And I know that people in the comments will be like, well, I don't understand why you don't get it. It's so obvious. Like, I'm trying not to get in my head about what comments I'm going to receive, but anyway. So damn. Just emotional this chapter set has made me. Like, I don't want anybody in the comments questioning my intelligence, because that really bothers me. Or that I don't get the story, because I do get what she's doing. It's just, I wish she'd maybe been a little bit more clearer in parts. Because then from
I thought it was interesting how the story transitioned to a Donmai, because that's what it's kind of been in the process of doing, and it kind of metamorphosizes into that, and that's fine. And maybe since now it's transformed into a Donmai, where typically in a Donmai there's a lot more communication between the main protagonists and the characters. Maybe because of that, when we get to volume 4, and I'm trying to give volume 4 the biggest benefit of the doubt, maybe when we get into volume 4, we will have Lo Binghe and Shin Ching-cho actually having a healthy communication. And maybe the whole point of this was that while it's a stallion novel genre, there's not that communication, and you don't get that between your characters. And this is what happens because you don't have that communication, and because it's essential for any romance for it to be there. And if you don't have that, then that's what happens. So maybe now that it's transitioned into a Donmai, we'll get into volume 4 and actually see that communication happen between these two characters. I hope so. I hope so. So much. I'm trying to be excited to not cry in volume 4. So, but anyway, we'll talk about Shin Ching-cho running off together. That was another part that I wasn't exactly happy about, but we'll talk about that. And then the story begins. So if MXTX is making the last part of this volume a huge, giant metaphor for here's your Zongdian literature, this is what's wrong with it, and here's my answer to that, to show you, to flip the script on its head and show you exactly how horrific the actual genre is. And now I'm going to change it. We're going to make it a Donmai. And I'm going to show you how it definitely felt, we'll talk about the tags, it definitely felt like MXTX was telling us, the audience, being like, look at all these stupid plot holes that these male stallion novels have. Now look at what women want and how our literary choices are better. I'm like, okay. So anyway, I'm going to try to make sense of this as we go through this, but so basically, I can't believe Zhuxi Long is dead. Poor Snake Man. I guess Gong Yi Zhao died, so karma, he has to die too. We'll do what we do, but oh my god. Anyway, so and Tian Longjun getting rehabilitated in the Zhaohua Monastery with Master Wu Qin. I kind of like that. I like that Wu Qin lost his legs because of Tian Longjun and Jinlan City, and now they're getting a chance to kind of bond and reconnect and bridge that gap. That's great. So they're like, we have to destroy the sword because Jinmo, he's already bound to Lo Binghe's sword. So if you destroy the sword, you would basically be killing him. And Shin Ching-cho's like, well, I'll think up another method. And that's when he thinks up the method that he is. And I'm sorry, during this reaction, I was so sad and distraught by what I was reading that I could not muster up the reaction that I'm sure a lot of you, if any of you were expecting me to be like, oh my gosh, so much good, you should know that this type of stuff, like any type of thing that seems, I know it was consensual, but any type of like physical assault, it takes me out so hard. So damn, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get a hold of myself. I just need to not think about it. It's fine. So anyway, I did think that I wish we could have seen what the illusions were that Lo Binghe had, because he clearly was seeing that somebody was trying to hurt Shin Ching-cho and he was trying to fight them off, which the sad part is I'm not necessarily mad at Lo Binghe because he did, he protected Shin Ching-cho from the cave collapsing and he was, fighting off the illusions, but he was still trying to keep Shin Ching-cho safe. But at the same time, it's like, I want to feel bad for Lo Binghe, but all of this was caused by him. So it's like, this is all your own fault. Like, you chose to keep giving demonic chi to Jinmo, even when you knew that was bad. So it's like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like if somebody's in a burning building, but they're the ones that lit it on fire. And you're like, but you lit the building on fire. And now you're like, oh no, I'm in it burning to death. It's like, why'd you light it on fire? So it's like, and I know it's complicated. It's just so incredibly frustrating. So then we find out that Jinmo has, multiplied his anger points by 10. And they're like, so we are trying to load the jade pendant so you can give it to him, but I like that the system's like, oh, it's currently loading. And I'm like, how has it taken you this long before? What? Now, when they said that they were like, deploy another tool, I thought they were going to talk about the binding rope, but apparently the binding rope is no longer, we're going to keep it up there, but the jade pendant's gone. But the binding rope, I was like, we're not going to use that to tie him up, the immortal binding rope, while you're waiting. We could have just tied him up while we were letting this go, but okay. But then that wouldn't have solved the problem with him having to have sex with him, so it didn't matter anyway. I guess the demon blood Zhu Long is gone and Tian Longjun doesn't care anymore, so we can just get rid of that. We can also get rid of Without a Cure because he got his health restored, so we can get rid of that too. We'll keep the binding rope just in case. They'll probably do some like kinky shit in volume 4 with the binding rope, and I'll be like doing that. But then they have the small scenario pusher, the luxury edition, and that's getting it to where they can have sex together. And it's not pleasant. It's not romantic. It's not worth celebrating. That's for sure. Now, Shin Qingqiu said he's not going to leave him. And it is made clear, going back through this, that Shin Qingqiu is suffering in this moment. He is suffering with his mind being muddled and Jinmo taking over him. And the one thing that I don't care for is Lo Binghe gnawing on Shin Qingqiu's lips. And that's only because I don't think Shin Qingqiu's into it. And the series MXTX has not made it known that he's into it. That was one thing that this last half of volume 3, it felt so rushed because like in other MXTX stories, the stories are longer than this and they are able to take their time to slowly establish whether a character like Wei Wuxian is kinky, because he is, and you find that out as you go, or whether they are into certain things like Shi Lian is, which you find out as you go. With Shin Qingqiu, he's grappling so much with his sexuality in the moment that you really don't get any time for him. He doesn't have any time. That's one thing that really annoyed me with this chapter set is Shin Qingqiu has no time to explore his sexuality. He's been in denial or / obliviousness the past 2.5 volumes. So he hasn't really, he just kind of starts to explore his sexuality and starts to explore ideas about it earlier in this volume. And I was like, oh, okay, great. You're exploring those. That's great. Let's see that flesh out. And it doesn't. He's just gnawed on it. He's like, okay, but MXTX doesn't give us the time to kind of flesh out whether Shin Qingqiu's really into that or not. He kind of like hints a little bit at it, but it's not, I wish there was more. I wish there was more to kind of like establish that for him. Right. But then, yeah, like none of this is sexy. None of this is romantic. This is all very, very horrifying. And nothing is good. Nope. I'm going to just skip over that because I'll get really upset if I read it again. I was like, nope, not at all. I hate that. And then what gets me is that Lo Binghe, of course, starts crying. And I kind of felt bad for Shin Qingqiu because I'm like, Shin Qingqiu doesn't get to cry in this moment, but Lo Binghe does. And I know that it is sad, and I feel for Lo Binghe because he doesn't get to enjoy this either. He didn't ask for this, and it's just happening, and he doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't know that by having sex with him, Shin Qingqiu will stop the merge and save him. But I'm also like, again, you lit your own house on fire. You should have thought about this before. It's really Lo Binghe's fault that all of this is happening. And it's so weird because it's like, it's this big chicken before the egg game. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people in the comments that'll be like, well, actually, it's Shin Qingqiu's fault. And I'm like, well, it's a big chicken before the egg. There's really, I say it's Lo Binghe's fault, but there's really no way to determine whose fault it actually is. Because it's just the story and the system. And it's all just intermingled at this point so much that it's hard to tell whose fault it actually is. But I hate that Shin Qingqiu, our peerless cucumber, has to be the one to save him, which it's the self-saving system. He has to be the one to save Lo Binghe. He has to be the one to sacrifice his virginity. He has to be the one to initiate it. He has to be the one to go through with it. He has to be the one to carry it out till the end because Lo Binghe sure as hell wouldn't have known what to do without him. And so it's just,
I'm like, did you ever watch Beauty and the Beast 2? Did you ever watch that one? I did. It sucked. And in that one, Belle was the Beast's damn life coach. And it made me so mad because it almost felt like a retcon of the original, which I loved so much. And I'm not saying that this sucks, because what MXTX does with subverting the genre and pointing out how terrible it is, that's the point. And it's effective and it's powerful, as you witnessed me sobbing through it. But I just hate the idea of Shin Shingcho being his life coach. Partnerships are mutual. Somebody is not your therapist. Grow up, Lo Bing-hei. Lo Bing-hei better be doing some damn work in Volume 4 to grow up and treat his Shizune like royalty, because if not, he would have been dead. So he deserves, Shizune better be pampered within an inch of his effing life in Volume 4, or I will not be happy. Our Peerless Cucumber deserves it, damn it. And I want to see that happening. So, it better. I'm threatening MXTX with a novel she's written 10 years ago. Anyway. Yeah, Shin Shingcho's the one stroking his hair. Shin Shingcho is suffering. And he is trying his best to help calm Lo Bing-hei down. And I'm like, I'm going to tell you right now, from all the stuff that I've read and the interviews I've watched of people talking about it, being a bottom is a lot harder than being a top. So that's all I'll say about that. I don't know from firsthand experience, but everything that the interviews I've watched will say so, right? But anyway, it's heartbreaking. It really is. It's heartbreaking. And so Lo Bing-hei is mortified because he thinks Shin Shingcho is going to die. And he's about to go all Romeo and Juliet and just kill himself. And Shin Shingcho's like, wait a minute, no. And that's when the system, that's when he has like, what made me really pissed off though, is that Lo Bing-hei has just violated Shin Shingcho. Just made Shin Shingcho and them have had sex. It wasn't fun for either of them. And they've just been through this horrific experience. And Shin Shingcho is trying to calm him down and being like, hey, okay, everything's going to pass now. And then Lo Bing-hei has the audacity to be like, well, how could you do this to me? And I'm like, how could he do this to you? I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I was so pissed. I was so mad. I was like, why does he waste his time with you? You are needy. You are needy and clingy, and you need to fix yourself. So I was so pissed. I was like, I was so mad. I was like, I wouldn't have stuck with this. I'd have been like, bye, and found somebody with some more emotional maturity and stuck with them. But no, you have to be the protagonist, so we gotta stick with your brattiness. I just could not believe that. I was so floored. And he's like, I should have realized none of you would ever choose me, and every single one of you wants to throw me away. And I'm like, will you fucking grow up? I was like, Shin Shingcho, did you not see what he just did for you? Oh. And then Shin Shingcho just is like, I just love him. I'm like, out. Would have been out. And I'm glad that Shin Shingcho is a better person than I am. and talked him down, but I wanted that talk to continue. I was like, can you continue to talk to him and put some more things in his head? And then after all that, Lo Bing-hei is just like, oh, well, but you're gonna leave me. And I'm like, he should leave your ass because you're being ridiculous. I'm like, after everything he just went through. Yeah. And then what gets me is that he's like, I don't want to see you controlled by Jinmo forever. And so that's why I did this for you. And then he's like, don't say that no one wants you or that no one will ever choose you ever again. He's like, and then he says he'd only ever been a child. And I also got mad too at Shin Shingcho saying, well, if only I'd realized this earlier. And I'm like, it's not your job because you were nice to him. That's the thing. I keep going back to this. If Shin Shingcho had, in the earlier parts of the story, been a bitch to him, then I've been like, oh yeah. But yeah, granted, he sent him to do errands And sure, but he didn't ignore him. They were together all the time. Ming Fan got kicked out because Lo Binghe was cooking for him and everything. And I guess if you want to say, well, Lo Binghe was doing all his work and cooking for him and Shizun was just wandering around, gallivanting around, then I wish we'd spent more time on that to get a little bit more information with that. But it's like, you're not telepathic. You were going off of what you thought happened in the original story, and it was self-preservation mode. And you've apologized already. So it's like, what else does he want? And then, but yeah, it's like, in this world, there had never been If Only I'd Known. And I will give Lo Binghe this. Yes, there's no If Only I'd Known because he knows how the story went. But he was coming at the story with the knowledge of what had happened previously. And that was he was killed by Lo Binghe. So it just... Anyway, I'm just ranting because I'm very emotional about this chapter set and chapter 80 in particular. And so then Lo Binghe says, well, I know why you said all those things, but if you're no longer here, then I don't have a reason to exist either. And he's like, oh, well, then we're just going to die together. And at first I thought, are they going to die? And that's going to be the end of the story. And then the system, when it said you've been upgraded to VIP accounts, and you would like to activate, I thought that it was going to be like a Scott Pilgrim sort of thing. So if you've ever watched Scott Pilgrim versus the World, if you've ever watched that series, spoilers for Scott Pilgrim versus the World for the next 10 seconds while I'll wave my hand again when the spoilers are over. But in that series, he goes through a series of actions and he gets to the point, and this is kind of what I like about Scott Pilgrim, is that he gets to the point where he's saving the girl, he saves the heroine, but he doesn't do it correctly. And he's like, I'm going to save you because I love you and I want to make things better for you. And then he ends up losing, and then he gets to activate like a 1-up. But when he activates the 1-up, he gets to go back in time and change the events of things. And he's like, actually, I need to fix myself and love myself before I can love you. And then that allows him to have the better ending. And it's really well done. It's really good. And these two characters, they need to love themselves before they can save themselves. And I wish we'd had more of that in these chapters. So when we said that they were getting like a high level ability of self-saving, I was like, oh, maybe he'll get to go back in the past and redo all of this and not suffer again. But no, that's not what happens. Instead, we fast forward, and instead the genre has changed. So we get back to chapter 81, where Proud Immortal Demon Way was a male power fantasy of a stallion novel. And airplane shooting towards the sky had been very certain when it came to this matter. And furthermore, Shin Ching-cho was unabashedly heterosexual, who was the straightest since the heavens. And this was very certain as well. So, if back when he just opened this baffling book, Proud Immortal Demon Way, which was filled with landmines, if someone had said to Shin Yan, oh, you'll go gay, plus you'll be going gay with the novel's male lead, and on top of that, you'll even lie down and surrender yourself to them, then he would have grabbed the brick that was the entire 50-volume set and showed them what their brains looked like when they were splattered across the ground. That's when I was like, is that, so was Shin Ching-cho, was he originally heterosexual and the book made him change sexualities, or was he always this way? Because the way that line reads, it makes it seem like he originally was straight, and then it's a little convoluted in that part, because on the one hand, it makes it seem like Shin Yan was heterosexual, but by going into the story, it made him become homosexual. But then another part of it is that Shin Ching-cho was heterosexual, but by Shin Yan possessing him and him becoming gay, does that mean that Shin Yan was gay all along and was just in denial of it? I mean, I would like to think it was the latter. I would like to think that it was. I wish MXTX made that a little bit more clear, or the translation made it a little bit more clear which it was, because I want to think it's the latter. So then he gets like the full bar again, and he wakes up. Now, again, he gets all the achievements, and I like that MXTX basically takes this moment to announce all of the things that Danmai do that the Stallion novels do not. So they're like, oh, landmines? Danmais don't have them. Oh, you can read them. oh, mired in melodrama? We don't have any of those things. And it's like, padding? We don't have any of that. Plot holes? Character development lacking? Oh, we don't do that. And then it says, like, good enough for a jerk off. Which I like Shin being like, what are they jerking off with? And I was like, well. And then they say the story of a lovesick, love deficient. And I was so distraught. It's Chunbyo, isn't it? Who tried to destroy the world. Lovesick and love deficient. I'm like, just communicate, man. That'd be great if you did. And so then he finds out it's become a Danmai. The genre has been revised. So maybe that means that good things will happen to Shin Ching-cho now instead of sad things. One can only hope, right? One can only hope. So he wakes up. I know some people will be like, oh, Liu Chingay is so evil for saying he's dead. I honestly don't blame Liu Chingay. I would probably be like Liu Chingay too if I was like, oh, he's dead for what he's done to Shin Ching-cho. I'll kill him myself. Maybe I'm Liu Chingay. Maybe that's it. Maybe I've been projecting with Shin Ching-cho this whole time. Maybe I'm a combination of Liu Chingay and Shin Ching-cho. I'd like to say I'm Shin Ching-cho, and that's why I support him and stan him so much. But I also understand where Liu Chingay is coming from. I think I'm more Shin Ching-cho than Liu Chingay, but I just, I get why that would have been not the thing to say in the moment because it got Shin Ching-cho worried. But also I get why he did it because he was pissed. So fair enough. But yeah, I guess, and all these people are like, they're all just looking out for him. You know, he's developed these relationships with these people and these friendships over all these years in the novel. And so then he's like, yeah, the two of you were found in the river. And he's like, oh, great. Everybody knows. Everybody knows everything that we did. Awesome. Wonderful. That's probably why they're totally okay with them leaving. They're like, yeah, you all can go. Go off, have your gay sex somewhere else, I suppose. But then we have Yu Qingyan, who I'm glad is alive. I'm glad that he's alive only because Shin Ching-cho said he would have regrets if he wasn't. Because at first I was like, does he being alive cheapen the sacrifice that he makes? It's debatable. I was kind of for a second thinking that I didn't know how to feel about him still being alive, but whenever I like it for two reasons. One, because Shin Ching-cho's like, I wouldn't have gotten having their last conversation be in the circumstances it was back in chapter 79. I'm like, okay, I am glad that he's alive to have that conversation with Shin Ching-cho for that reason. But then I'm also glad because it does let them tie up. Like, he's like, look, you were in love with Shinju, and maybe Shinju and you could have had something, but that's in the past. And now I'm moving forward. I want to have a relationship with Lo Binghae, so we're just friends. Cool. And I like that Yu Qingyang is enough of a great person to be like, yeah, cool. I'm fine with that. I'm glad with that. That makes me happy. So yeah. Anyway, so then Liu Mingyan shows up. Everybody is there. With the nuns, I like that we haven't seen Xia Ling though, so maybe we'll see her in volume 4. And Mo Bei-jun is nowhere to be seen, so maybe we'll see him as well. I'm still sad Zhu Xilong is dead. I am pretty sure that the songs of Chunshan was written by Shang Qinghua and distributed, and now he's an author of all these stories between Lo Binghae and Shin Ching-cho, and he's writing them and autographing books, living his best life. And I'm like, oh, really? Isn't that convenient for you? So Shin Ching-cho confronts Shang Qinghua, and he's like, you know, Binghae has been a big help to me. And, you know, whenever Shang Qinghua was like saying that Yu Qingyan, he's like, kind people get taken advantage of. I'm like, that is rich coming from him. And I'm like, what? I'm like, these nice people have spared your life. So Shang Qinghua's a little bitch. And I'm very curious to see what happens with him in volume 4. But he basically comes out and says that this was what he wanted to write the entire time. And so he's like, I wrote Danmai in the past, but nothing ever was, you know, successful. He's like, so I can only start down this road of mass market products. He's like, writing a novel is a lonely thing. And it is. I did feel sorry for him in that aspect,
where he's like, you know, compared to the writing, the kind of stallion guy who's everywhere on the Zongdian literature, it's better. I don't know if I agree with him that a character like Lo Binghe is better. I'm like, he's like, that's more in line with my writing philosophy. I'm like, I think Lo Binghe could be a much better character, a much more nuanced, developed character. For me, he's not as three-dimensional as some of the other characters that MXTX has written. I just don't see it as much. He's got trauma and angsty backstory, but I want him to grow and develop more than what he's done so far. He's kind of one, after you get past the Shinju flashback to now, he's been pretty one note. And I want him to develop and change and grow as a character. And I don't know if MXTX is going to give us that in volume 4, or if it's just going to be like sexy time. And if it's going to be just that, then he's probably still going to be my least favorite MXTX protagonist. So there's that. But anyway, and then Shinchingcho says, are you looking down on gay protagonists? He says, so your writing philosophy is writing about the gays. And Xinghua is like, oh, you got a problem with the gay agenda? He's like, oh, well, he's like, if the system hadn't selected you, a loyal and diehard reader, then the plot would never have been distorted to this extent back to the outline I had discarded. So he's like, you've brought this all back to what I originally had planned. He's like, I wasn't able to withstand the loneliness in real life, and I caved to financial pressure and chose this in accordance with other people's tastes. But thanks to you, everything I wanted to write has played out before me. And he's like, you're the chosen one. My career is at last wiped clean of regrets. And Shinchingcho is like, who's your diehard reader? And he's like, well, I won't talk to you about this. You're an anti-fan. He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. But I like the fact that Shang Qinghua had this originally planned as a storyline. We've talked about this in previous discussions, that this originally was supposed to be a Donmai, and he just altered it into a stallion novel. But at least it's back to the better genre, right? And he's like, I'm only an anti, not a fan. But then he starts to hum and sing the song, and he's like, you're the one that created this tune. He's like, I hate you so much, this giant asshole. I like that he basically beats him up until Master Wu Chen shows up. Like, good for you, Shin Ching Cho. It's like Lucille Bluth's like, good for her. Right? So yeah. So it just, oh my God. So then they have the conversation with Master Wu Chen about Zhu Xilong, and they're taking in Tianlong Jun and him being like not a bad guy, which he's honestly, Tianlong Jun was remarkably chill throughout this entire story. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. I hate the fact that he didn't like, you know, Lo Binghe enough, but I do appreciate the fact that he wasn't a complete asshole, you know? There have been worse MXTX fathers. Let's just put it that way. There have been worse ones. So then, yeah, Yu Qingyan like tells him to go on, go see your man. And I am a little sad that when Shinchingcho, because when he sees him, he's like, don't say a word. He's like, as a disciple, why didn't you wait on your Shizun? And Lo Binghe is like, well, they chased me away. And he's like, okay. And that seems to be true. The part that this paragraph here where he says, if he hadn't gone around pestering and harassing everyone and everything, perhaps Lo Binghe really would have darkened to the core and become the young man in the original work. I think he would have. Someone who'd rend a person into a human stick with his bare hands, who cursed the world and himself. Although now, instead, he'd become a lovesick young man, so it really wasn't that much better. And then when he says, but at least he'd gained some lovable qualities, I'm like, that he just follows you around, I guess? I guess him being hopelessly devoted is supposed to be the lovable quality. He's kind of a bitch. I'm like, his only quality that's good is that he's has unconditional love for Shin Chingcho, but that's only because Shin Chingcho is the only one that showed him kindness. I'm like, that's my other thing, is like, if any other character had showed him kindness, would he have the same feelings towards Shin Chingcho?
if Xia Waling or any of the female characters had shown him kindness too, would that have changed? It's not. I guess the part that I don't care for is I don't, realistically, in the real world, I don't know if someone that is as extreme as Lo Binghe, I would be remotely appealing. I would find remotely appealing. I'd be like, And there have been some people in the Discord in the comments say that they relate a lot to Lo Binghe, but I don't know if y'all are like this extreme. I hope not. Because I don't think someone like Lo Binghe in the real world, I think they would have a hard time finding someone that could deal with this, which I say that I'm not dating anybody because they're not dealing with this. So I can't say anything. That's me being prejudiced. I can't say that. So sorry. I can't say that. He's just too much for me. I could never date someone like Lo Binghe. Too much. Too bratty, not mature enough. I'm like, no. I'd be like, yeah, down boy, bye. I would not consider Lo Binghe to be a long-term relationship. It'd be like, well, you were fun to date. You were a fun time. But he doesn't strike me as having the soulmate vibe that Lan Wangji and Hua Chong give out. They give out soulmate, like stay forever together vibes. Lo Binghe is like a puppy. He's cute, but we got to get him potty trained before we can see the longevity of that, But and then what happens here? I want to go back to this. He's like, well, you knew you weren't welcome, but you still sent me back. And he's like, well, I figured he would. And this part got me too. He's like, I figured you definitely prefer to see Sangzhong Mountain first. And I know what Shen Qingqiu means here. He's like, well, what I wanted to see first was you. What he's getting at is he's like, Baka, I've wanted to see you this whole time, and that's sweet. But I'm also kind of like, I don't know how I feel about us rushing to this point in the story where Shen Qingqiu just leaves everybody he's cultivated a relationship with behind to go with this brat who needs to have his hand held for the entirety, like literally the whole volume. Like this has literally been the whole volume. Like he has to have one of those telephone string leashes on to go to the grocery store because otherwise he might think Shen Qingqiu is abandoning him. Like that's my problem, is that in the other two stories, spoilers, in the other two stories by MXTX, them going off on their own, it felt justified. You were like, oh no, I know why you all are going. You go do that. Good for you. Yes. And after all they go through in that story, you're like, no, it makes sense why they're by themselves. Here, it just feels forced. And it feels like Lo Binghe's like, well, if I can't have you by myself, I guess I'll just destroy the world again. And I know that's not the case, but it has that vibe where Shen Qingqiu's like, no, we'll go off together to appease you. Since you can't stand when I'm around other people, we'll go off together so you don't go have a high-speed come apart. And it just feels like he's caving into Lo Binghe's wishes when Lo Binghe needs to be a little bit more mutual and maybe try to be a little bit more flexible towards Shen Qingqiu. Instead, it's like, if Lo Binghe doesn't get his way, he's going to throw a fit. And it's like, I just hate it. I'm like, you shouldn't have to do that. Like, why wouldn't Shen Qingqiu want to stick around this place? He seemed like he liked it, right? And so, anyway, he gets all excited like a damn puppy. And then Shen Qingqiu's like, well, you are a brat and no one likes you. But it's also like Lo Binghe's kind of cultivated that persona himself. So again, Shen Qingqiu's like, okay, well, he's like, and then Lo Binghe's like, nobody welcomes me here. And he's like, well, I welcome you because nobody else will. I guess I'll be the one to do it. And so he's like, we could leave. And he says, if you aren't welcome here, then wherever we want to go, this master will accompany you. I'm like, Shen Qingqiu makes so many caveats for him. I'm like, I would have been like, how about you cultivate a friendship with these people instead of being a brat and maybe we don't have to run away. Anyway, so they end up leaving and they go back up, and so they hold hands and run off together into the wind. And with this peerlessly bizarre book's complete and successful transformation, Great Master Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky career was devoid of regrets, while the unparalleled ranting critic, Peerless Cucumber, could no longer say he disdained it the way he once had either. The author wouldn't fill in the plots, so this great one had been forced to take matters into his own hands. In the long river of history of great and mighty Zongdi and Stallion novels, what reader had led the charge like him? Which, granted, he did have the biggest charge. And so he's like, he had coughed up blood while putting himself on the line to fill in plot holes, just to rescue the B points of a brainless power fantasy, a peerless marvel of a work that had the writing quality of a grade school essay. And so, yeah, the story had yet to end, but the story between you and me has only just begun. I honestly, before I went back through and read these chapters, I was kind of disappointed, and I felt like this was really rushed, and it wasn't satisfying to me at all. I was like, what? And so I'm hoping that volume 4, now that this is technically a Donmai now maybe volume 4 will fill in the gaps. It's a really long volume. There's a lot in that volume. So that has me hopeful that maybe because it seems like it's the longest of all, maybe it has the most. So, and I'm sorry, I know if you like Lo Bing-hei, I these last 2 weeks I have ranted about him, but I want to like him. I want to enjoy his character, but he is such a whiny brat, and I know he has trauma, but no offense, in real life, trauma is not an excuse to be an asshole. It's not. Everybody has trauma. Everyone has trauma. And you can't measure whose trauma is more traumatic than the others. Everyone has it, but that doesn't mean you get permission to be an ass. It doesn't. So I just wish he'd grow up and grow as a character and also be a little bit more mutual to Shin-Ching-Cho and kind of maybe try to cater to Shin-Ching-Cho a little bit, because Shin-Ching-Cho's had to cater to him this whole damn novel series, and it'd be nice if our Peerless Cucumber got a little bit of luxury in return. It would be nice, but we'll just see if that happens. So, I guess we ought to look at the back here. There are 2 pictures. One is of the jade pendant getting taken back to Lo Bing-hei. It is really well done. I do really like it. It's very pretty. I like it a lot. They do make Lo Bing-hei look very sympathetic in that shot. And then the other one is Shin-Ching-Cho being like, let's run away. Even though I had friends, I'm going to give up all my friends to be with you and your trifling high maintenance ass. It is like Shin-Ching-Cho had friends, and he's like, I'll ditch them all because you're too high maintenance. I'm like, I am not high maintenance. So high maintenance people, I'm like, oh my God, touch grass. Anyway, so what do we have here? We have our character guides. Do we get any fancy images? That'd be nice if we did. We'll see. We have our glossary, all of that. Anything? Oh, do we not have any pictures this time around? How sad. We don't. I can finally read the back, though. Tianlong Jun. Nice. Zhu Shilong, R.I.P. And, that's Su Jian. That's who that is. I was like, who is this? Okay. Yeah, Lo Bing-hei looks an awful lot like both of them. The artist who illustrated this, what is her name? We'll get on this. Zhao Tong Kong, or Valingxi, they did amazing. Their illustrations are so beautiful. I love it. So it says satisfaction points plus 500. To save his sect from destruction, Shin-Ching-Cho has at last submitted to Lo Bing-hei, though he wishes people would stop saying it that way. Unfortunately, they're not wrong. Lo Bing-hei has finally made his desire for his old master clear. For all that Shin-Ching-Cho longs to return to their peaceful days together on Shijing Peak, he knows it's impossible now that Lo Bing-hei is darkened into a true demon lord. But as Shin-Ching-Cho begins to uncover more of Proud Immortal Demon Way's hidden plot, including his host body's own backstory, he realizes he must learn to see Lo Bing-hei for who he truly is if either of them are to survive. And that's my thing. Like, he does finally see Lo Bing-hei for who he truly is, but it doesn't make a difference. I mean, he ends up being like, well, I guess I'll save you because I love you. But it's like Lo Bing-hei there wasn't much done on Lo Bing-hei's side other than him helping him during the mausoleum, right? Anyway, and before that, he does save him with the rhinoceros pythons. I know I'm flogging a dead horse and we're almost to the end of this, but I really wish that we were able to give more time for Shin Ching Cho to come into his choice in sexuality so it didn't feel forced, because by this chapter we as the audience know, okay, he's gay. He's been gay this whole time. But it almost felt like Shin Ching Cho was forced to come out. Like he was forced to reveal his sexuality and be okay with it to save Lo Binghe. It felt like he was forced to have the sexual act against his will, even though he was like, well, I gotta do it to save you. I don't have a choice. So it almost felt like he wasn't given the opportunity to truly explore his sexuality and how he feels. He just had to suddenly, it felt like a forced coming out, and that made me really uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, I don't like that at all. So I'm hoping that volume 4 will at least have Shin Ching Cho, one, be able to talk about his sexuality and talk about it with Lo Binghe and explore it. And two, I wish Lo Binghe would stop being a high maintenance brat and actually give Shin Ching Cho the loving that he deserves. Because so far, it hasn't happened. So far, he's just been like, it's all been on Lo Binghe's terms, and he's gotten to do whatever he wants to Shin Ching Cho, and Shin Ching Cho's complied with it because he doesn't have a choice. And I would like, for once, Shin Ching Cho to get some passionate luxury bestowed upon him as he deserves as the peerless cucumber. That will make me feel a little bit better about them as a couple, because right now I'm like, Lo Binghe, you ain't putting in no work. You're just saving him from getting smushed by boulders. So, anyway, I feel better now that I've talked you all through that, through my angst and upsetness. Anyway, those are just my opinions. I'm going to take a break from this series, and I'll be back next week, but I'm recording ahead. So I'm going to take a little break for a little bit, clear my mind, see some more of your comments, and then come back and let y'all know what happens and how that goes. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm back real soon with more of Scum Villain Self-Saving System, Volume 4.